Welcome back to part 16 of What If Naruto Was Told About the Secret to the Shadow Clone Jutsu. Please remember to like and subscribe as it motivates me to upload more in the future, and as always link to the fanfiction is in the description. Chapter 46, To the Land of Snow We Go. Naruto never thought he'd find himself back in High no Kuni so soon into his training period. Well, maybe not soon. It had been 6 months since he started training, after all, but with nearly 2.5 years still left, he'd not anticipated returning to his home country at this juncture in his life. Not until the end of his training. According to Ero Sennin, his perverted teacher, they had been contracted for some kind of mission. Much like the one they'd been sent on to Tsuki no Kuni, this mission was to be a bodyguard mission. Naruto was actually more excited for this mission than he was the last one. Their last mission had them guarding a fat man and a brat. And while the brat turned out to be alright, the person they were guarding this time would be 1,000 times better, because this time they were guarding a celebrity. Yes, a celebrity. To be exact, they were guarding Yukie Fujikaze, the famous actress who played the titular character for Naruto's favorite guilty pleasure movie series, Princess Gale. They were currently on their way to meet with Yukie's manager, some old guy named Sandayu something or other. Naruto didn't much care for the details. He was just excited to be meeting his favorite actress. Look at you, brat, bouncing around like a kid on a sugar high. Jiraiya laughed at Naruto as walked down the street of what appeared to be an average village. Excited about meeting a world-famous actress, are we? Hell yes. Naruto cheered, doing a fist pump for good measure. How can I not be excited? We're meeting Yukie Fujikaze. Yukie Fujikaze was well known as a child actress. Despite only being 17 years of age, she had already played a number of different roles. While her most famous showing was the Princess Gale series, she had played in a lot of other movies as well. I can't wait to finally meet her, Naruto continued blabbering. My only disappointment is that I don't have any of my Princess Gale posters with me. You have posters? If I had known we'd be meeting Yukie Fujikaze, I would have made sure to bring several of them to get them signed. Sighing deeply, Naruto scratched the back of his neck. Man, talk about disappointing. He perked up a second later, unable to actually stay depressed in the face of their next mission. Ah, well, at least I'm getting to meet Yukie. And I can still probably get an autograph. Jiraiya chuckled at his apprentice's enthusiasm. It was good to see his godson's anger at him had dissipated. That had not been a pleasant experience. Certainly not something he would ever want to experience again. Can you be any more giddy? You're like a child in a candy shop. Naruto rolled his eyes. Well, excuse me, Ms. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed today. I can't help it. How many people can say they've had a chance to meet the best actress in the entire world? How many of those people can say they were her bodyguard? Not many. Calling someone the best of anything is very subjective, Naruto. Just because you like this Yukie woman's acting skills doesn't mean she's the best in the business. I don't know how you can say that. You don't even watch TV. Did you forget, Naruto? I can see everything you see. I've been able to for as long as I've been inside of you, which means I've also seen all the movies you have. Granted, you haven't seen many movies, but I have to say, out of all the actresses you know, I think Yukie definitely ranks number 5. Naruto narrowed his eyes. I only know 5 actresses. Within his mind, Kyuubi snickered. Exactly. Great. So his inner demoness was teasing him again. She'd been doing that quite a bit lately, more than she used to. Part of him wondered why, but the rest just didn't care. Naruto grumbled some as he cut off his connection with the sexy fox lady. While he didn't mind a little banter with the vixen, he didn't want to get caught up in a conversation where all she did was tease him right now. Deciding to get a few more details about their mission, he turned to Jiraiya, who walked alongside him as they moved through the crowded city off the coast of High no Kuni. Nay, Ero Sennin. Kami dammit, Naruto. When are you gonna stop calling me that? Where exactly are we supposed to meet up with Yukie at? Also, what are the specifics for this mission, exactly? Asked Naruto, blatantly ignoring Jiraiya's angry exclamation. If the perv didn't want being called Ero Sennin, then he should stop being so damn perverted. Jiraiya sighed. First of all, we're not meeting Yukie-san anywhere. We're meeting her manager, Sandayu-san. Second of all, this mission isn't your standard bodyguard mission. What do you mean by that? I mean, we're not guarding just one or two people. While Michiru had that caravan of his, we weren't responsible for its protection and our only concern was the prince and his son. Everything else was merely collateral. For this mission we're being required to guard the entire crew responsible for the production of the Princess Gale movies. I see. Naruto cupped his chin with his right hand, eyes scrunching in thought and making his features appear even more vulpine. Sounds like this is going to be a lot bigger than a lot of our other assignments. Maybe, maybe not, Jiraiya said. We've certainly got our work cut out for us, but I doubt we'll have to deal with anything as dangerous as what happened on our last mission. You just had to say it didn't know, Naruto said. What? Jiraiya looked at his apprentice with clear confusion on his face. What did I say now? You just completely jinxed our mission. Honestly, didn't this perverted old coot know anything? You should never say shit like, I doubt our next mission will be that tough, or, it'll all be smoothing sailing from here. That's just asking for trouble. Jiraiya rolled his eyes. You're being pessimistic. Am I? Naruto fired back. This dude seriously hadn't learned yet. Take a look at my track record. My first C rank out of the village I ended up fighting against a frickin' A rank ninja and, Naruto hesitated for a moment, someone who could use ice ninjutsu. Afterward, we had the Chunin exam where I fought Orochi fucking Maru in the second stage, had my arm ripped off by a psycho Jinchuriki in the prelims. During the final stage one fought against Neji the prick Hyuga, bushy brows Lee, Yugi-chan, and then I had to go on and defeat Gaara again after he went all tanuki on the village. And all that happened within my first few months of being a ninja. I have a whole list of shit that I could bring up to back my theory. Seriously, it's like the whole world just loves fucking me over, and now you've gone and completely jinxed our next assignment. I'm gonna have a fucking aneurysm from all the stress these missions put me under. Drama queen. Oh, shut up, Naruto grumbled to the vixen in his mind. He was not a drama queen. Not one bit. Everything he'd just said was completely true. You'd feel the same way if you went through half the shit that I have. I've gone through far more than you ever will. Naruto could practically hear the scoff in her voice. Did you forget how long I've been around? I'm well over 1,000 years old. I've seen and done more than any mortal ever will. Yes, that is true, but I'm not really a mortal anymore, am I? Naruto asked, his voice abnormally soft, even in his mind. Kyuubi seemed to choke on her own words. Yes, I suppose that's true, I guess you're not a mortal anymore. She became quiet after that. Naruto waited to see if she would say anything else, but when it became clear she wouldn't, he sighed, wondering how long it would be before the knowledge of his own semi-immortality stopped bothering him. Probably after all of his friends were long dead. What a morbid thought. Okay, I'll grant you've had it pretty rough since you became a ninja. Well, at least his perverted sensei was willing to admit that much. But I still think you're being too pessimistic about all this. Seriously, we're only being hired as a safety precaution, not because there's any real danger involved. Yuki no Kuni hasn't been a hotbed of activity since the coup d'état led by Dotto Kazuhana over a decade ago, and we probably won't even meet him since all we're doing is filming a movie. What could go wrong? XOX. Naruto and Jiraiya eventually found the man they were looking for in a large building filled with stagehands rushing to and fro. Naruto could immediately tell something was up from the moment they entered the building. The people around them all appeared frantic. It didn't take long to find the guy they needed to. He was standing in front of the stage, yelling into a walkie-talkie, his voice high-pitched and frantic. What do you mean she's not in her room? You're telling me she ran out again? Naruto would have wondered who she was, but at that moment Jiraiya walked up to the man and, after a second's hesitation, he decided to follow. You're Sandayu Isama, I presume. The one Jiraiya addressed appeared startled and spun around to stare at them. Yes. Can I help you? Sandayu quickly made to straighten his glasses and Naruto got a good look at him. The dude looked old. Not like old, but more like a worn old, as if he'd been under so much stress that he'd aged prematurely. He wore a pair of rimmed glasses, had his hair in a ponytail, and had way too many stress lines, like an old fruit that had been left out in the sun for too long. Yeah, we're the ninja you hired for the bodyguard detail, Jiraiya said. He then looked around, his face reflecting his confusion. Is something going on around here? Everyone seems kind of frantic. Oh, it's horrible, Sandayu moaned piteously. Our star actress, Yuki Fujikaze is missing. Whatever Jiraiya had been expecting, it most certainly wasn't that, a fact which became more than evident by the old Sanin's dropped jaw and wide eyes. I told you something could go wrong, Naruto smirked at his sensei. Jiraiya leveled him with a glare. Shut up, brat, he grumbled, not at all pleased with having the first few seconds of their mission already looking so troublesome. Maybe he should have kept his big mouth shut. Jiraiya turned his attention back Sandayu, trying to glean what he could from the man as to the possible whereabouts of their missing actress. Naruto didn't pay a whole lot of attention, doubting they would be able to glean any clues from this man, who seemed just as lost as to the whereabouts of Yuki Fujikaze as they were. Instead of listening as the old man expressed his woes to the even older man, the Uzumaki made the familiar cross seal for his most used jutsu and created several clones. All right, men. Naruto barked like a drill sergeant giving orders. The clones snapped to attention. You all know what to do. Spread out and search the area. When you find Yukie, dispel yourselves. OSSU. His clones saluted before shooting off. Some took to the buildings, others ran along the streets. One of them even decided to get cheeky and started jumping on the heads of people passing by. Most people would have shaken their heads at that one. Naruto was just depressed he didn't think of doing something that awesome first. Weren't he and his clones supposed to be the same? Now there's an interesting ability, a voice said from somewhere behind him. I haven't seen something like that before. Turning around, Naruto ended up face to face with another old man. For a second, Naruto wondered if everyone around him was going to be some kind of geezer on this trip. Wasn't he supposed to be protecting Yukie Fujikaze, the hottest actress in showbiz? This man had shock white hair, wore shades indoors, a hat, and had a pipe in his mouth. He grinned at Naruto. Who are you, old man? Asked Naruto. Hey, I'm the director to the Princess Gale movies. The old man smirked. I'm not surprised you don't recognize me, since I'm the one in the background shouting orders while all the magic is happening on the big screen. Anyway, what was that power you just used? You mean my Kage Bunshin? Yeah, that. The director nodded his head. I've never seen anyone do something like that one before, however, it's definitely an interesting ability. Would be pretty useful, too, and I could just imagine how cool it would be seeing something like that on the big screen. Wouldn't it? Naruto said, grinning. He had no trouble tooting his own horn when someone recognized how awesome his jutsu was. It would totally look amazing on the big screen. I could just picture the looks on people's faces as they watch a movie and see 1,000 people suddenly appearing on screen. It would be totally awesome. Indeed it would. The director nodded his head. I might even have a use for that ability in Princess Gale. That's something I'll have to think about doing, actually. It looks like I may need to rewrite some of my script. Naruto grinned. You know something? You're all right for an old guy. Said, old guy, laughed. And you're all right for a brat. The two grinned at each other, already bonding over their shared disregard for protocol and the awesomeness that was the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. For some reason, Jiraiya, while listening to Sandayu complain and fret over his missing charge, shivered in some unknown fear. So does this happen often? Naruto asked, arms crossing over his chest. I mean this whole, Yukie is missing, thing. It almost feels like you guys have done this song and dance before. Not usually, the director said, sighing and scratching the back of his head. I mean, sometimes she'll occasionally disappear, but she usually shows up again an hour or two later. Yukie is actually a very admirable actress. She's never run off like this before, and she's certainly never vanished during the middle of shooting. This is the first time I've ever seen her pull a complete vanishing act like this. XOX. One of Naruto's clones eventually found Yukie Fujikaze on the other side of town. The woman in question sat upon the edge of a stream just inside the borders of the small city. Dressed in stately robes fit for a princess or at least one acting as a princess, the young woman silently gazed at the stream, knees pulled up to her chest, arms wrapped around her knees, and her eyes staring into the tranquil waters that flowed across her vision. This was how Naruto found her. He stood several feet away, not yet approaching, but instead just taking a moment to admire the woman. She really was pretty. She was even prettier in real life than she was in the movies, and Naruto needed a moment to calm himself down before greeting her. It would be really bad form if he went all fanboy on her. What kind of bodyguard acted like an overly enthusiastic fanboy anyway? You really are obsessed, aren't you? Jealous. HMPH. Not in the least. Taking a deep, calming breath, Naruto walked up to the woman without bothering to mask his presence. She seemed to notice him, for her head turned and lifted to gaze at him from her seated position. He stopped just a few feet from her, and did his best to put on a friendly grin. "You're Yukie Fujika's, right?" Naruto asked for clarification before pointing at himself with a thumb. "I'm Uzumaki Naruto, a chunin from Konohagakure. I'm here with Ero Jiraiya-san as a part of the security detail hired by Sandai Osama to watch over you and the others during your photoshoot and ensure your safe passage through Yuki no Kuni." The grin seemed to gain several more levels of brightness as he looked down at her. "I'm looking forward to working with you." Naruto had many expectations about working with an actress of Yukie Fujika's level. He expected her to act with poise and grace, just like the person she played in the Princess Gale movies. He expected her to understand decorum and how the coming days would work. He expected her to be understanding and compassionate. And most of all, he expected them to have a cordial, if professional relationship. What he did not expect was for the woman to spray him with a can of mace. Gah! Rubbing his eyes furious, Naruto tried to somehow alleviate the pain of having mace shot into his eyes, but damn it if it wasn't hard. Who the hell does that anyway? Just spray mace into people's eyes. That wasn't graceful or compassionate at all. Finally managed to rid himself of the worst sting, Naruto opened his eyes to glare at the woman. Damn it. What the hell was that, for, It was only after a couple of seconds that he realized Yukie no longer stood in front of him. It took a moment, but he soon found her leaping onto the saddle of a horse. He stared at the woman in shock for several long silent seconds, watching as the horse she rode disappeared around a corner. Then he balked. WHW, what the hell? She just ran away from me. Growling, Naruto decided that he simply couldn't let this go. If this woman wanted to take him on a merry little chase, then by the Raikudo Sennin he would show that woman why you can't outrun a ninja. No one got away from Uzumaki Naruto. No one. Upon hopping onto the nearest roof with a chakra-enhanced leap, Naruto took off in the direction he last saw Yukie traveling. It didn't take long to find her. She was the only person in the entire city riding a horse down the street. That made things considerably easier. With the grin of one about to pull a successful prank, Naruto leapt down from the building he'd been running along and onto the horse's hind quarter. Neither steed nor rider noticed him yet, such was the softness and silence with which he moved. Damn, he was awesome. You really know how to ride a horse, lady, Naruto said, amusement seeping into his voice, especially when Yukie nearly jumped out of her harness. She turned her head to see him standing there, gaping, and Naruto gave her a close-eyed grin. However, the fun ends here. I think it's about time you and I gack. It was most unfortunate for Naruto that he was standing instead of crouching. If he had, maybe he would have been able to avoid the branch that smacked him right in the throat. He hadn't, however, and thus ended up getting knocked off the horse when an abnormally long branch sticking out of a passing tree clogged his windpipe and blocked his air passage. Naruto lay on his back for several seconds, staring up at the sky, gasping in asphyxiated agony, catching his second wind. Then he groaned and sat up. That was embarrassing, he muttered. I'll say. Beaten by a tree branch. Some ninja you are. Put a muzzle on it, Naruto growled. He then directed his gaze to the tree branch that knocked him off Yukie's horse, glaring at it. What he wouldn't give for the ability to light things on fire with his vision right now. He sighed. I guess I'll have to go and find Yukie, again. You mean your clones will find her again, right? You don't do anything. Shut up. XOX. Dark lighting greeted Naruto as he walked into the rundown dive that called itself a bar. He blinked several times, letting his eyes adjust to the shifts in the light spectrum. Several round tables situated into booths greeted his vision, grimy and rusted, with stains and dirt covering their surface. And the patrons weren't much better. Most of the people there were definitely the shady sort, sitting in their alcoves, huddling together and whispering. This certainly was not the kind of place he'd want to have a drink in. The sooner he got out of here, the better. Now if he could just find. Oi, bartender, get me another drink. Speak of the devil. Naruto found Yukie Fujika's, drunk as a skunk, swaying in her seat, and demanding more alcohol. As he walked further in, one of the other patrons, a man covered in a long trench coat and a hat hiding his face, stood up and began drunkenly swaying toward the equally wasted Yukie. The man's hand stretched out, reaching toward the young woman, whether to cop a feel or for purposes more nefarious would never be known. I don't know who the hell you think you are, Naruto hissed, glaring at the suddenly frightened drunk. But if you think for 1 second that I am going to let you grope some woman in my presence without her consent, you've got another thing coming. A pause. Even if that woman is so drunk she probably won't even notice. The wrist clenched in the blonde's grasp began to creak as he increased the strength of his grip, causing the man to cry out. A second later, Naruto spun on the balls of his feet, the drunk in his grip getting jerked off his feet and sent flying right into the door when Naruto let go. Clapping his hands as he saw the man crumble to the floor in a heap, clearly unconscious, a certain grinning blonde clapped his hands, and then turned his attention to the woman he'd come to this dump for. Yukie Fujika's was, most assuredly, drunker than anyone had any right to be. Her bloodshot eyes gazed at him, half-lidded and blinking, as if she recognized him but couldn't place where. Cheeks stained red from alcohol consumption also showed how far gone she was. Naruto was surprised. Wasn't Yukie only 17 years old? Why was the bartender allowing her to drink? Or did she have some kind of fake ID or something? Maybe she tossed around a lot of money. I don't really appreciate you running off on me, lady. Naruto crossed his arms over his chest and glared at the woman. I don't care if you are an awesome actress. I don't put up with crap from Ero Sennin, and I'm not putting up with that crap from you. And who the hell sprays mace in a person's eyes? Yukie stared at him in her drunken stupor for all of 10 seconds. Then she turned around, clicking her tongue and going back to her drink. TCH, you again. Why don't you go bother someone else, kid? You're ruining the mood. Oh, ruining the mood, am I? Naruto's voice was so laden with sarcasm it could fill the bar. I'm so sorry for ruining the mood, but then, you'd know all about that, wouldn't you? I'm pretty sure the mood was ruined the moment you decided to run out on the set while you were mid-shoot. Whatever, Yukie dismissed his words. Naruto grit his teeth. He was seriously beginning to regret this assignment. After having such high hopes about meeting one of his favorite actresses of all time, Naruto had been expecting someone a little okay, a lot more personable. This woman was completely destroying all of his childhood fantasies. I also wouldn't try running out on me like that again, Naruto said. That shit you pulled back there with the mace. Uzumaki Naruto never falls for the same trick twice. The raven-haired young woman stared at Naruto hard for several seconds, which was impressive considering how drunk she was. Seriously, how many people who had enough alcohol in their system to poison an elephant were capable of producing a glare like that? Then Yukie turned away, going back to her drink. Why are bothering me anyway? Why do you even care? Oh, I don't know, how about because it's my job? Naruto crossed his arms over his chest. My sensei and I were hired to protect you and your crew as you traveled to Yuki no Kuni. I'm not too keen on failing my missions, especially not because some snotty little princess wants to run from her duties. He was still pretty pissed off about what happened in the past hour or so. His throat was sore from where he'd struck that tree branch, and his eyes still itched from when she sprayed mace in his face. That was just not cool. Now, come on, get your ass up. I'd like to get this mission over with so I can move on with my life. Che. Yukie scoffed at him. What would some brat like you know about life? Plenty. So she wanted to play that kind of game, did she? Well, that was just fine with him. Naruto was more than willing to play. I probably know about life than some snooty little actress. And you're not that much older than me, you know. The belligerently drunk actress offered him a bitter chuckle as she swirled the ice around in her glass. Allow me to let you in on a little secret, kid, actors are the biggest fakes in the entire world. We're put up on the big screen, displayed to millions of people who ogle and admire us, never realizing that we're some of the biggest liars you'll ever meet. We're given our scripts, handed these lives put on paper that we're supposed to breathe life into. It's all just a sick joke. Naruto snorted, causing Yukie to toss a nasty look his way. What are you laughing at? I'm laughing at you. Actors are the biggest fakes in the entire world. Please, you're preaching to the choir, lady. I'm a ninja. We make our entire lives off lying, cheating, stealing and killing. Living fake lives. We do that every time we go on an infiltration mission, generating false identities, creating fake personas, and breathing life into them. You clearly have no concept of how the world works if you think actors are the biggest cheats and liars around. Yukie's glare was truly scathing. What would you know? More than you, it seems. Naruto was still getting his chuckles in when he decided they'd wasted enough time. Now, come on. I've humored you long enough. It's time to go back to Sandayu and the others. They seem pretty worried about you, can't imagine why. Oh, let them worry. Yukie dismissed Sandayu and the rest of the crew with a dry chuckle. Sandayu's just worried about his next meal ticket, and don't even get me started on the director. He doesn't care about anything but his movie. As for me, I'm done playing the part of the princess. They can always get some other woman to pick up the slack. Movies switch out actors for sequels all the time. I'm sure they won't have any trouble finding someone else to play Princess Gale for the next movie. One thing's for sure, however, and that's that I'm not going back to Yuki no Kuni. No way, no how. Naruto faintly registered the words, going back, and shelved it for posterior inquiry. Right now he had a stubborn, prissy little actress to deal with. And how should he deal with this? Now there was a question. Worth asking. Part of him just wanted to knock the bitch out and drag her sorry, drunken ass back to the others, world-famous actress or no. But he couldn't really do that, could he? Eros Sennin would be upset, and it wouldn't really generate goodwill or endear him to the rest of the cast even if giving this lady a chop to the neck would make him feel a whole lot better personally. Releasing a prominent sigh, Naruto sank down into a chair next to the woman. Oi, bartender, get me whatever she's having. The bartender, a middle-aged man with graying brown hair and a handlebar mustache, gazed at him with one eyebrow raised skeptically. You want me to get you a drink? What are you, 10? I can't give alcohol to a 10-year-old. A vein throbbed on Naruto's forehead. That throbbing intensified when Yukie giggled at him. He sent her a scathing look before turning back to the bartender and pointing at the metal plate on his head. You see this headband? This headband means I'm a ninja, jerkwad. I know 50 different ways to slit someone's throat and hundreds to kill them. It also means I'm exempt from standard laws and regulations within Hai no Kuni. Now get me my damn drink. Whatever you say, kid, the bartender said, setting aside the glass he'd been cleaning with a rag and getting Naruto his drink. The young man grumbled some as a glass with several cubes was set in front of him and some kind of amber liquid poured in. Naruto took a small sip of the stuff, and then decided that whatever swill this was had nothing on Myobokuzen brand fire sake. What are you smirking at? Naruto asked upon noticing the blatant smirk on the drunken Yukie's face. Said smirk widened at his words. I see you've finally decided to throw in the towel, she said, grin widening even further when he took another sip. You know you can't convince me to do what I don't want, so you've given up and decided to join me. Smart choice. If that's what you're thinking then I can tell you right now that you're dead wrong. Naruto propped an elbow onto the table and rested his cheek on his hand, the other of which held his drink. I have no intentions of giving up, however, seeing as you're being completely unreasonable at the moment, I figured I should at least relax a bit and share a drink with you before we start hating each other's guts. Naruto looked at the blinkingly flabbergasted Yukie and smirked as he raised his drink to her in toast. So how about it? Wanna at least have this one small gesture before we start making each other's lives miserable? Yukie looked at him, blinking some more, before a cynical chuckle escaped her lips. She raised her glass, completely missing the soft fizzling of something dissolving in her drink. The price she paid for already being quite drunk. Sure, kid. Cheers. Cheers. Their glasses clinked together. Naruto threw his drink back, gulping it down in one go. Not one to be outdone, Yukie followed his example. Naruto watched as she drained her entire glass, and despite her personality being one that left a lot to be desired, couldn't help but admire the way her elegant throat moved as she drained her glass. He then shook his head. What the fuck is wrong with you, Naruto? You know nothing can happen between you two, even if you did like her, which you don't. Remember what you are. No woman would love you once she realized you're actually a monster. Within the seal, Kyuubi listened to Naruto's thoughts, wondering if he knew that she could hear him. Probably not, or he wouldn't be thinking like that. You know, for a brat you sure can handle your drink, Yukie said, turning to him, eyes becoming droopy. Naruto smirked. I'd say you're not so bad yourself, but since you're about 2 seconds away from passing out, I don't think I can. Yukie's frown grew more prominent. Her eyes began droopier and she began swaying on the spot. Her body tilted back and forth and her eyes blinked several times as they tried focusing on him. What are you, out? The teen actress suddenly pitched forward. Fortunately for her, she ended up falling into Naruto, who kept her from having a close encounter of the face-on-steel kind. Her eyes were closed, pink lips slightly parted, glistening in the low lighting, and light snores could be heard coming from the woman who had seemingly fallen asleep. Naruto couldn't help but notice that Yukie actually looked much prettier when sleeping. It probably had something to do with how he didn't have to deal with her attitude. Scooping the girl into his arms, Naruto gave a cheery grin to the bartender before heading toward the door. He absent-mindedly took notice that the drunk he slammed into the door had, at some point during his conversation with Yukie, woken up and left. Ah well, what he did care about that drunk. It's not like some stupid old pervert trying to cop a feel of a young woman could do anything to him. Several kilometers away, Jiraiya, standing with Sandayu and the director, sneezed. XOX. I see, so she has the hex crystal, a deep voice akin to a growl exclaimed from the large man seated on a metallic throne, a glass of amber liquid in his left hand, the ice inside idly jingling back and forth. With his other hand being used to pillow his head, the individual looked down at his subjects with the absolute authority of a ruler as he addressed the 3 people kneeling before him on the ground. Splendid. This is truly wonderful news, Nadare. This actress, Yukie Fujikaze, she is undoubtedly Koyuki Kazuhana. Nadare, a man with long grayish-purple hair tied into a ponytail, marks underneath his eyes, strange-looking shinobi armor and a mask-style Yukigakure headband on his head, stated with a smirk. My informant who's been shadowing her for the past week has confirmed that she does indeed have the hex crystal. She's without a doubt the genuine article. Kneeling on Nadare's left, a woman with pink hair lifted her head, revealing a cynical smirk and sadistic green eyes. I can hardly wait. It was worth the 10 years it took to find her. Hey. The largest of the group, a hulking giant of a man with a chiseled chin, notable plate armor, kneeling to the right of his leader, smirked. Taking care of one little girl. This'll be a piece of cake. Don't be too sure about that, Nadare said, frowning, his face growing serious. She's not alone. My informant has managed to find out that she has 2 powerful shinobi guarding her. Who are they? Asked the man on the throne. Uzumaki Naruto and Jiraiya of the Densetsu no Sannin. The man leaned against his throne. Jiraiya of the legendary 3 and his apprentice, Uzumaki Naruto. Yes, these 2 could definitely cause trouble for us. Indeed, Nadare said. While I am confident any one of us could handle the boy, I am not so arrogant as to believe that we could take on a Sannin, especially not Jiraiya. He is not hailed as one of the most powerful shinobi in the elemental nations for nothing. The man leaned against his throne, his face turning toward an area of the large room covered in darkness. It seems I was right to hire you too. 2 people stepped out of the shadows several feet from the 3 Yuki ninja. Both were easily distinguished-looking individuals. The one on the left had medium length, slicked back white hair and purple eyes, and around his neck was a headband with the Yugakure Hidden Hot Springs Village symbol with a slash running through it. The other had tanned skin and stood much taller than his counterpart. The white hood and black mask around his head hid everything about his face except for his eyes, which peered out at the world around him with an almost apathetic gaze. They were unusual-looking organs with green irises, no pupils and red sclerae. Talk about freaky. Both wore strangely vibrant clothing, black cloaks with red clouds imprinted on them. The one with the freaky eyes wore his in an oddly normal fashion. Meanwhile, the other wore his cloak open to reveal that he didn't believe in wearing shirts, his muscular torso exposed to the world despite how cold it must have been. Where the tall man with the eyes appeared unarmed, the one with white hair carried a large, triple-bladed scythe with red blades over his shoulder. Indeed it was, the one with the eyes spoke up, his voice raspy and grating, as if he hardly ever used it. Jiraiya of the Sannin is no ordinary shinobi, And we've been keeping tabs on his apprentice, who is already powerful enough to go toe-to-toe with Orochimaru's strongest henchman during the Chunin exams that happened in Konoha recently. Mere Jonin-level shinobi would be no match for either of them. Nader and the other three ninja growled, but the man on the throne chuckled. Indeed, I'll be counting on you too. Che, the man with white hair, spat on the floor. Nader and the others started at such disrespect being shown, but he didn't seem to care. As long as I get to fucking kill something, I don't really care. And this greedy bastard will do anything for money, the man finished, hiking a thumb at his partner in crime. Money makes the world go round, Hidan, the man said. And if you don't stop pointing at me, I'll kill you. Hidan smirked at his partner. Hey, like you could. If you were able to kill me, I'd let you. TCH. I'd like you to wait in the wings at first, the man on the throne said. While I will definitely be utilizing your services for this, I would like to see how well my chakra armor works against skilled opponents. A fight with a Sannin and his apprentice will be a great test. That's fine, the dark-skinned one replied. So long as I get my money, I don't care either way. Che, heathen, religious fanatic. Nader watched the two shinobi as they begun arguing over, of all things, religion and money, with a look of disgust. Dotto might approve of these two Akatsuki members, but he sure didn't. You couldn't trust a group of ninja mercenaries for hire, and he wouldn't be trusting these two as far as he could throw them. Silently, Nader made a promise that he would kill at least one of the ninja guarding the former daimyo's bratty little princess. If not Jiraiya, then at least Naruto. Surely it couldn't be that hard to deal with a 14-year-old brat, right? Chapter 47. Battle, Akatsuki in a snow-covered land. Naruto grinned as he felt the salty breeze hitting his face. He stood on the bow of the ship, staring out into the vast ocean. He'd seen it plenty of times before in recent months, but he'd never really had a chance to enjoy it. Not like this. The last time he'd been on a ship, he'd been dealing with personal issues. The whole getting caught in the middle of a storm thing also put a hamper on his enjoyment of being on a boat. You're such a child. Well, excuse me for being 14, Ms. I'm well over several centuries old. We can't all be ancient creatures of mass destruction. Just for calling me old, I'm going to be giving you indigestion for the rest of this mission. Huh, like you could. We both know you can't do that. The seal won't let you. Oh, my. It seems the hairless monkey is getting smarter. Naruto didn't rise to her bait and instead decided to switch topics. Something on your mind? Not really. I'm just bored. You've been getting bored an awful lot lately, Naruto commented. This wasn't the first time Kyuubi had spoken up from within the seal with no real purpose in mind. Lately, she'd been talking to him a lot more. Their conversations varied widely, from stories of ancient battles long since past, to trading banter like they were doing just now. Naruto didn't really know why she talked to him so much, but he was grateful to her nonetheless. He was never alone so long as she was around. I hope you're not implying something. What would I be implying? Within her cage, Kyuubi sighed. Never mind. Oi, brat. The voice of his master shouted behind him. What do y'all want, perv? Jiraiya frowned as he stopped in front of Naruto. Is that any way to speak to your master? It is when he's a lecher, Naruto quipped, turning around and leaning against the boat. So, what's up? The director is getting ready to do the photo shoot. Jiraiya hitched a thumb behind him, indicating a point further up the ship. Figured you'd want to see it. Naruto grinned. You bet your perverted ass I want to see it. Come on, Ero Sennin. Let's go. Damn it. It's Jiraiya sensei to you, disrespectful Gaki. Naruto laughed as he rushed across the deck, leaping onto the mast and wall, running up it until he reached a rope that ran lengthwise across the second half of the ship. Grinning some more, he sprouted a single chain from his sleeves and used it as a pulley to shoot down to the other side. Everybody else was already there, the director and his assistant, the cast and crew, Sandayu, and of course, Yuki was standing in the center of it all, having the final touches to her makeup done. Asu. What's up, old man? Naruto greeted the director, who gave a hearty laugh and tossed him a grin. Heard from Jiraiya that we're filming the next scene, did you? You're just in time. Of course. I wouldn't miss this moment for the world. Glad to hear it. The filming soon got underway and Naruto found himself a place to sit and watch. The idea of actually seeing a movie being filmed was so completely awesome, and he didn't want to miss a single second of it. It was an almost surreal experience to watch these professionals while they worked. Everybody completed their assigned tasks with efficiency, and the actors were all phenomenal. They worked incredibly well together, acting in seamless synchronicity. Even Yuki, who he didn't have the best opinion of, worked in complete harmony with everyone else. Yuki. Stuck up. Obnoxious. Self-entitled. Prissy. Naruto didn't like her, not one bit, but at the same time, he would admit that she was an incredible actress. She might have been a bitch in real life, but on the stage she was a goddess. Her skills at acting were beyond believable, and the emotion she put into each line and every scene made him wonder which Yuki was the real one. The one acting on stage, or the annoying drunk who complained about her lot in life and ran away from her responsibilities as an actress. Yoshimaru. Yuki, or rather, Princess Gale, held one of her beloved companions close. Yoshimaru had just taken a fatal blow for his princess. Blood gushed from an open wound on his side, and his breathing had grown ragged. The ashen pallor of Princess Gale's skin and the horrified look in her eyes seemed so genuine that Naruto wondered if the emotion might not be feigned. Princess, Yoshimaru choked out, blood gurgling from his throat. I am sorry. It looks like I won't be able to. Yoshimaru. The horrified look in Princess Gale's eyes grew wider still when Yoshimaru's body went limp and still. Yoshimaru. Hold on. Cut. The entire filming process came to a screeching halt. What? The director practically shouted. What's wrong now? My teardrops, Yuki told him plainly. I can't cry without my teardrops. Naruto face faulted. Oh, for the love of, would someone get Yuki her teardrops so we can get this ball rolling again. We're wasting time here. Naruto stood up and rubbed his now sore nose. Yet even while trying to soothe his red and scruffed snaz, he couldn't help but stare at Yuki as someone put eye drops into her eyes so she could cry. Are you freaking kidding me? What an odd human this girl is. For someone to possess such an amazing acting ability yet not be capable of crying on command, it's rather shocking. I'll say. Isn't that like a standard skill that all actresses should have? And how come it sounds like you're speaking from experience? Because I am speaking from experience. It's amazing what a man will do for a beautiful young woman who's in tears, the lengths they'll go to in order to please them. I couldn't afford to not have such a valuable skill set in my arsenal. In the face of such infallible logic, Naruto could only facepalm. Figures. Oh my God. The director said as he and the rest of the crew stared in shock at the massive iceberg that now blocked their path. Naruto didn't think he'd ever be able to come up with such an articulate response. The iceberg had appeared sometime overnight. Their ship had almost crashed into it, and it was only thanks to the man piloting that they hadn't been run ashore. Naruto was grateful. Shinigami only knew what would sort of damage smashing into that could have caused to their hull. This thing is huge, the cameraman exclaimed. It's going to take forever to get around this. We'll be off schedule by. This is perfect, the director exclaimed before the cameraman could finish. This is the best place to shoot our next scene. The cameraman appeared confused. Naruto didn't blame him. Don't you see? The director grinned at his crew. This iceberg appeared as if it was fate. It's like the movie gods are telling us to start filming on this thing. There was no stopping the director, and the others knew better than to try, it seemed. Naruto guessed they must have already experienced his brand of crazy and were used to it by now. The crew didn't even complain as they were tasked with unloading all of the equipment, sets and stage props. Naruto watched from a distance of some meters, sitting by a fire and warming his hands alongside Jiraiya. He thought about making some clones and helping the crew set up and carry stuff, but decided not to. It wasn't his job to help them make their movie, only to protect them during its creation. Besides, his clones weren't always the most graceful of chakra constructs. It would be really bad if they ended up breaking stuff. Looks like you've got an admirer, Jiraiya said, knocking an elbow into Naruto's side. He grunted and looked over to see where his sensei was pointing. Yuki, who was also sitting near them, and glaring at him, he might add. If people could create jutsu from their glares, Naruto was sure he'd have just been frozen over. This wasn't the first time Yuki had given him that glare. He'd been on the receiving end of it almost every time they were within seeing distance of each other, which was pretty much all the time since they had been on a ship. The only times he wasn't within her general vicinity was when Jiraiya guarded her, or when he was sleeping. That's nothing new. Naruto stopped looking at Yuki, having decided to ignore her glaring. If anything, I think her hostile expressions have lessened. Jiraiya glanced at Yuki for several seconds, then shrugged. Whatever you say, brat. I'm not seeing it personally, though. It still looked like she's trying to kill you with her eyes. Naruto grunted and cast his eyes across the vast land of ice. Snow-covered fields spread out before him, a wonderland of pure white powder that appeared softer than pillows. Large cliffs jutted from the ground like stakes, their crystalline form glittering with the reminiscence of gems in the afternoon sun. The iceberg they found themselves on was truly massive. Estimating the length of things was a skill he'd picked up during his pranking, and he'd grown pretty good at it. At a rough estimate, he would have to say that this iceberg was, at the very least, 3 square kilometers in length. That was huge. I wonder, is something like this iceberg natural? Naruto asked to himself. Did you say something, brat? Not a thing. The filming soon got underway. Naruto watched the cast film with one eye, admiring how professional the crew acted and the brilliance of the actors. Yet even as the film continued rolling, he couldn't help but feel uneasy. Giant-ass icebergs like this did not just appear overnight, did they? Brat, Jiraiya's eyes surveyed their surroundings with narrowed eyes. The man was no longer a lecherous pervert, but one of the 3 Sannin, a man whose power was known far and wide. You feel it, don't you? Yeah, Naruto mumbled, his own slit-like gaze searching the area. We're being watched. Naruto channeled chakra into his eyes. The strange mixture of half-human half-biju energy bled into his cornea and then his irises. His pupils turned a dark purple akin to amethysts and his sclera became pure black. His vision shifted spectrums, allowing him to see others as little more than colored silhouettes. Jiraiya appeared to him as a red silhouette with mixtures blue and brown, denoting his main affinity to fire and his 2 secondary affinities to water and earth. The cast members all appeared mostly as white with small splotches of color, which made sense, as none of them were shinobi and hadn't trained their elements, nor did they have much chakra. A little further out was there, Lord Moso. Yuki in her role as Princess Gale pointed her sword at a man dressed to the nines in an elaborate mauve robe. This is it. Your reign of terror ends here. Naruto didn't even bother stringing hand seals together. He channeled chakra into his left hand and made a fast slashing motion. A purplish wave of wind chakra enhanced by his own demonic properties flew from his hand and towards a large mound of snow. Ha ha ha. Lord Moso laughed. That is what you think, Princess Gale. However, without Yashimaru to protect you, you are. The blast of chakra slammed into the large hill and exploded with a fierce howl, like the raging of 10,000 demons. What the heck was that? Quicker than any of the people present could fathom, Naruto appeared in front of Yuki while Jiraiya moved to intercept the shadow that had leapt from the mound. It was a man with dull purple hair tied into a ponytail, who was wearing a strange bluish-gray bodysuit with pieces of armor on it. The man pulled out a kunai just in time to intercept Jiraiya's attack. Sparks flew during their quick clash before the two leapt away from each other. Ho ho ho. Jiraiya laughed as he landed several meters from his new foe. It looks like we've got some snow ninja in our midst. Jiraiya of the Sannin, Nadare said. I've heard a lot about you. Course you have, my boy. Despite the situation, Jiraiya laughed gaily, as if he wasn't about to battle an enemy ninja. Everybody has heard of the great Jiraiya-sama. HMPH. I've always wanted to see how I'd fare against a Sannin. Well, now's your chance. Jiraiya spread his arms wide. Show me what you can do. As the two began to clash again, Naruto turned to look at the cast members who were staring at the scene in shock and indecision. Everybody get back to the ship, he ordered as he created a dozen clones. We'll cover your retreat. What is hey? Yuki squeaked in shock when one of the clones picked up Yuki and ran towards the ship. Oh, no you don't. A voice echoed across the iceberg. Hiro no Jutsu. With his chakra-sensitive vision, Naruto was more than capable of tracking the chakra as it raced along the ground, traveling straight for Yuki and his clone. Clicking his tongue, he swiftly used the replacement technique to switch himself out with Yuki. He and his clone then became engulfed in a pillar of ice. Ha! A woman landed on the ground several meters away from where Naruto had been frozen. That was easier than I thought. Are we sure this brat's really the apprentice of Jiraiya? As if responding to her words, the snow to her left rumbled and shifted as a man emerged. The two ninja appeared to be complete contradictions of each other. The woman was short, petite, with pink hair and green eyes. Meanwhile, the man was massive, a hulking monstrosity whose short black hair and beady eyes lent him a mean look. Just about the only thing similar between these two were their almost matching outfits and the arrogant smirks plastered on their faces. HMPH. It wouldn't matter if he was Jiraiya's apprentice, the man said. A brat is still a brat. I suppose you're right, the woman mused before turning her attention to Yuki, who shook in place. So, it's true, then. I didn't think it was, but there's no doubt about it. It's been a long time, Princess Koyuki. Yuki's eyes widened in fear. What are you? Now, the woman interrupted, can we just skip the, I don't know what you're talking about spiel? We already know that you are actually Koyuki Kazuhana, daughter to the former daimyo of Yuki no Kuni. And we also know that you have the hex crystal. There is no use denying it. Now, I want you to be a good girl and give that crystal to me. Yuki's body shook, not from the cold, but from the terror overwhelming her heart. She shook her head back and forth, as if doing so would allow her to wake from this horrible nightmare. Except this was no nightmare, and she wouldn't be waking up from it anytime soon. This was real. So, your real name is Koyuki Kazuhana, a voice spoke up behind the pink-haired woman. How interesting. What the? The woman turned around just in time to receive a fist to her face. She was sent flying backwards, plowing into the snow-covered ground and kicking up waves of white powder. Fubuki. The big man shouted only to double over and spit out a mixture of bile and blood as Naruto rammed a knee into his gut. Naruto wasn't finished, however, and he quickly pulled his knee back and slammed an elbow into the man's face. There was a satisfying crunch. As the snow shinobi's nose broke under Naruto's assault. As the shinobi's head snapped back like a piñata being smacked by a bat, Naruto spun his body around, fists drawn into his torso, and then launched his attack. Suin Kamikaze no Tatsumaki. Naruto launched both fists into the big man's torso. Twin blasts of tornado-like wind slammed into the snow shinobi, whose armor cracked as he was lifted off his feet and sent flying. Naruto didn't bother watching the snow ninja's inelegant flight. He turned around, created a clone, and ordered it to grab Yuki, who appeared to have fallen unconscious, and run. Hyoten, Subum Fubuki. Several swallows, tiny birds made of ice, raced at his clone. Having already anticipated that something like this would happen, he body flickered in front of the birds. Kitsune Bai. Bright purple flames flared to life and surged forward like a wave. They melted ice and snow faster than Naruto could. Say, Hokage. The swallows were swallowed up by the massive wave of purple fire, which was so hot the ice didn't even have time to evaporate as it was melted with ease. What? This is the end. Naruto appeared behind the startled woman, whose eyes had gone wide. She tried to turn around and face him, but Naruto didn't hesitate to shove a hand coated in wind chakra straight through her back. The strange contraption on her back didn't even afford her any protection. His hand sliced through it like a lava jutsu through earth. The woman blinked, her head tilting to look down at the hand sticking out of her chest. Her body shuddered once, and then she died. Fubuki. The large man yelled, "You little punk. I'm gonna kill you." Naruto disappeared in a body flicker as the man tried pounding his face in. As his foe stumbled forward, he reappeared behind the snow shinobi, a purple Rasengan swirling within the palm of his left hand. Rasengan. Gurah. The armor held for a second, but the power put into the Rasengan combined with its grinding abilities overloaded the armor, shattering it. Naruto then thrust his hand directly into the man's unprotected back, grinding away at his spinal cord. Naruto's face became splattered with blood as the large shinobi went flying forward, where he plowed into the ground, kicking up large geysers of snow before rolling to a stop. He didn't get back up. Shit. Nadare swore as his hand flashed through several seals. Hyoten. Akaku Hakuge. The iceberg suddenly broke apart as a large white whale at least 20 times the size of a normal human burst up from beneath it. Jiraiya and Naruto were forced to leap away as it ascended into the sky, blocking out the sun. When it crashed back into the water, the waves it created nearly capsized the boat, where all of the cast and crew had been fortunate enough to get on before the attack. That was incredible. Tell me you got all that. The director asked his cameraman, who held a large camera over his shoulder. Yep, the man sounded shocked. We got it. Good, the director nodded. XOX. Okay, so why don't you explain this to me one more time, just so I understand what made you think this was a good idea? Naruto demanded of the bowing Sandayu. It was just a few hours after the battle. Yuki was still unconscious and resting in her bedroom. The entire group had gathered together in what would normally pass for a dining room, but had since become a meeting room. He and Jiraiya were sitting on one side of the table. Jiraiya had his feet propped up and his arms crossed. On the other side sat the director and his cameraman. Naruto didn't really know why the cameraman was there but assumed he was kinda like the director's yes man. I am terribly sorry, Sandayu apologized for the upteenth time. It was never my intention to deceive you. If it was never your intention to deceive us, then you never would have lied, Naruto said dryly. Don't be so hard on him, brat, Jiraiya said. I'm sure Sandayu has his reasons for lying to us. Right, Sandayu. Why yes, I do. Sandayu started to sweat under Jiraiya's stare. I would have told you Princess Koyuki's true identity sooner, but because of the danger she would be in, I needed to keep it a secret. The princess doesn't know this, but she has always been in danger ever since Dodo, her uncle, usurped the throne from her father. While Dodo seemed to have forgotten her, or maybe he just assumed she died in the violence, I knew that the moment word got out that she was alive, her life would be overcome by great peril. Naruto wanted to say that he felt for Sandayu's plight. He really did. It sounded like he and Yuki had gone through a very rough patch of life, and the man did sound genuinely worried for the former princess, but at the same time, you say you want to protect her, yet here you are, dragging her back to Yuki no Kuni, where her uncle is waiting. Explain this to me, because I seem to have misinterpreted something. How is that protecting her from great peril? It seems to me like you're leading her into great peril, not protecting her from it. Sandayu flinched at the accusation, but held strong. I understand that this must make me look bad, and I won't deny that you are right. Bringing her back to Yuki no Kuni is dangerous, especially now that Dodo knows for sure that she is alive. However, we have no other option. What is it that you're planning, Sandayu-san? Asked Jiraiya. You wouldn't drag Koyuki all the way here, putting her in mortal peril and possible death for no reason, right? You are correct. Sandayu bowed his head to Jiraiya. I do have a reason for bringing her here. However, to understand that reason, you must first understand what happened in the past. You see, many years ago, I served as a soldier in the army under Sosetsu-sama's rule. We were a very peaceful nation, however, and so there was no real need for fighting. Perhaps that is why we were unprepared when Dodo, Sosetsu-sama's younger brother, led a rebellion. Using Yuki ninja, he assassinated his brother in cold blood and then began a war of eradication. He killed everyone who was loyal to Sosetsu-sama, mercilessly slaughtering them. I myself barely escaped with my life. What a boring sob story. Kyubi sounded like she was yawning. Naruto quietly shushed her. He would admit that he felt sympathetic to what this man had gone through. That's because you're a sap. Hush you. After escaping from Yuki no Kuni, I wandered the elemental nations for a year or so. Like everybody else, I had believed that Koyuki-sama had died in the fire, and I had been left destitute and without a purpose. But then, I found Koyuki-sama again. Sandayu sniffed and raised a hand to wipe the tears that had appeared before they could fall. You have no idea how joyous I was when I had discovered that Koyuki-sama was still alive. She didn't know who I was, of course, but it didn't matter. Once I found Koyuki, I decided that I would help her out. I became her manager and helped her get into show business. We traveled around for a while, did a few gigs, and then we got contracted to do the first Princess Gale movie. Sandayu paused for a moment, and Naruto could have sworn the man's eyes gained a sparkle where before there had been none. Koyuki-sama has always been an amazing actress, but when she started playing as Princess Gale, it was something else entirely. Every time I saw her act, I couldn't help but be amazed. She wore the face of a princess so well that I kept thinking to myself, this is what Koyuki-sama was born to do. She wasn't born to be an actress, but to be a leader for her people. It lit hope within me again. Sometimes, that hope was the only thing that kept me going. That's why, when I heard from the director that the next movie was going to take place in Yuki no Kuni, I knew that we had to go back. It was like a sign telling us to go back and reclaim what rightfully belongs to Koyuki Hime, to take back what Dodo stole from her. Sandaiu got down on his hands and knees, bowing before them, his head pressed against the ground. That's why I'm begging you, please help me take back the land that Dodo stole from us. Help me reclaim Koyuki Hime's throne, so that she might rule Yuki no Kuni as she was meant to. Silence reigned. The director and cameraman looked at Sandaiu with tears in their eyes, clearly moved by his passionate speech. Even Jiraiya looked like he was contemplating helping him. Naruto wasn't as moved. That's nice and everything, Naruto started, but have you ever asked Koyuki how she feels about this? Excuse me. Sandaiu looked up. Yuki. Koyuki. The person you're dragging back to Yuki no Kuni in order to overthrow her uncle. Have you thought about how she feels about all this? Have you even asked her how she feels? Well, I mean, I did mention that we were going to Yuki no Kuni. So, you told her that she was going back to the place where she was nearly killed but didn't say why you were really going. Well. And I'm guessing that you didn't even factor her feelings into account. You probably assumed that everything would work out once you got there, didn't you? I bet you thought that all you had to do was have her show up and Dodo would just automatically lose, huh? That's not it. I think it's really great that you want to help save your country. I really do. But, what you did, what you're doing, it isn't the right way to go about it. You can't just force someone into a role they don't want to take. You might want to save Yuki no Kuni, but does Koyuki? Considering she's run off on you several times ever since you told her that she'd be going to Yuki no Kuni, I can't imagine she feels the same way. Sandaiu remained silent. By this point, everyone was staring at Naruto, open-mouthed and gawking. Even Jiraiya looked like someone had just shoved a toad down his throat. Naruto didn't really know what came over him, but he felt angry for some reason. Heat surged through his veins, making him almost see red. The next time you want someone to do something for you, you need to ask them first. You can't force them into doing what you want them to. With nothing more to say, Naruto spun on his heel and stormed out of the room, passing by a startled Koyuki on his way out. Well, Jiraiya said into the now silent room, while I don't necessarily agree with my apprentice on all points, I will say that you messed up big by not telling us about the real reason we were hired as bodyguards. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. As Sandaiu began apologizing over and over again, Jiraiya looked at the door through that Naruto had left through. And then he began giggling. Smooth, brat. Real smooth. XOX. Naruto sat outside on the deck, his legs hanging over the railing. The chilly night air ruffled his hair and cooled his body, which had grown abnormally hot for some reason. The coolness also served to calm him down. What was all that about back there? Why did I get so angry? Mating season. Excuse me. It's a natural phenomenon that we demons go through. Once a year, our bodies became abnormally fertile and we seek partners to reproduce with. The anger you felt was likely caused by the old fart threatening someone you saw as a potential mate. What? Are you serious? Of course I'm not serious. I'm a chakra construct, Naruto. I don't have a mating season. Oh. Kyuubi giggled within his mind. Naruto could practically see the way she demurely held a hand to her mouth. Did you actually believe me? No. Naruto blushed. Of course not. Kyuubi giggled some more. If you say so. I do say so, Naruto huffed, then calmed down. But, still, I wonder why I reacted like that. I mean, that didn't seem like me at all back there. What are you talking about? Of course that was you. You're always about defending others and getting upset on their behalf. No, not that part. I meant how angry I got. I was practically ready to throw Sandaiu through a wall. I've never felt that angry before. Within her abode, Kyuubi crossed her legs and idly stroked her tails. Well, I'm not an expert on this, considering we're in uncharted territory here. But it might just be another side effect of your chakra mixing with mine. Humans weren't meant to wield a Biju's chakra. Even Jinchuriki have a seal that keeps our chakras separated. However, your chakra has completely mixed with my own, which means there's no seal filtering out my chakra. Naruto bit his lip as he tried to understand where this was going. So, you're saying that because your raw, undiluted chakra is running through my coils, it's making me angry. In a sense, my chakra reacts powerfully to emotions, mostly notably negative emotions like anger and rage. Your chakra is mixed with mine, so it makes sense that it would work the same way. I see. Naruto sighed. Great. Just one more thing to worry about. So it seems. By the way, you have a guest. I know. Naruto didn't bother turning his head as he spoke up. Are you gonna keep hiding behind that pole? When the person didn't say anything, Naruto patted the spot beside him. Come on. It's easier for us to talk if I'm not shouting at you. Nothing happened for several seconds, but then someone stepped out from behind the mast. They shuffled forward, stepping into the light from overhead lamps. It was Koyuki. She strolled over to where Naruto was sitting and leaned against the railing. Shouldn't you still be in bed? Naruto asked curiously. You've had a pretty hectic day. It might be better if you rested a bit more. Yuki didn't say anything at first, and when she did speak, it was about something completely different. I heard what you said back there. To Sandayu, I mean. You did, huh? Naruto sighed. Why did you defend me like that? Naruto thought about what to tell her. He supposed there wasn't any harm in being honest. I guess it's because I just don't like the idea of someone being forced to do something against their will. I see. Koyuki looked thoughtful. Does that mean you're not gonna force me to go to Yuki no Kuni? No, I am, Naruto admitted, making Koyuki stare at him with a flabbergasted expression. But I'm not doing it so you can lead a rebellion and overthrow your uncle or anything like that. Then why? Because it's my job, Naruto answered seriously. I'm a shinobi. I was paid to do a job, to protect you while the Princess Gale movie is being filmed, nothing more. If you decide that you don't want to become the daimyo of Yuki no Kuni, then I won't force you. If you decide to lead a rebellion and take your rightful place as ruler, then you can be damn sure that I'll help you. However, I won't make your choices for you, and I won't force my opinions on you. That's not why I'm here. Yuki stared at him like he'd sprouted a tail from his ass for several seconds, and then looked away. You're really weird. Has anyone ever told you that? Plenty of times, Naruto said as he took out a scroll and unrolled it. Now then, channeling some chakra into the network of seals, Naruto unsealed several dozen bottles of Mount Myoboku firebrand sake. He then gave the surprised-looking Koyuki Kazuhana a mischievous grin. Since we never really shared a drink last time, how about we spend the evening getting shit-faced? He asked, lifting a bottle and lightly shaking it. Koyuki's resulting grin was probably the most beautiful he'd seen in a long while. XOX. Wake up, sleepyhead. Naruto stifled a groan as he was slowly roused from slumber. He had a headache. It felt like his skull had been split open by an axe and then several thousand shadow clones had dispelled after using his brain as a bongo drum. Maybe putting a seal on myself so I could get drunk wasn't such a good idea. I'll say. Naruto winced as Kyuubi's voice bounced around inside of his skull. Kyuubi, why do you sound so awful? And please speak more quietly. The reason I am like this is because of you. Anything that affects the seal affects me too. So when I got drunk. That is correct. Kyuubi huffed. Honestly, what were you thinking, getting wasted like that? Now I have a headache. Whatever. I'm too busy dealing with my own headache to care about yours. Naruto shut off the link before Kyuubi could retort. He opened his eyes slowly so as to not be blinded by any light and blinked when he saw the ceiling above him. It was just a plain white ceiling, but it wasn't the one from his room. He knew that because his ceiling had a crack running straight through the middle. This bed is also a lot more comfortable than mine. Naruto spent a moment just luxuriating in the feel of the super soft mattress on his back. It was seriously the most comfortable thing he'd ever slept in. He could just stay here for, He. Ellipsis question mark. Naruto turned his head at the sound of perverted giggling. His sensei, Jiraiya, stood by the door, a notebook in one hand and a pen in the other. The man was scribbling down in his notebook like a madman and mumbling something under his breath. Naruto didn't know what he was mumbling about, and he honestly didn't care to know, so he did the first thing that came to mind. He threw a pillow at Jiraiya's face. The hell are you doing here, perv? Jiraiya merely ducked under the pillow and grinned at his apprentice. Don't you think that's a question I should be asking? What are you doing in Koyuki Hime's room, brat? Better yet, what are you doing sleeping with Koyuki Hime? Naruto stared at the old perv like he was an idiot. What the hell are you talking about, old man, eh? It took Naruto several seconds to realize what Jiraiya had said, and another several to realize what it meant. Slowly, as if the world might be inexplicably destroyed if he moved too fast, he turned his head. Koyuki was sleeping right next to him, snuggled into his side. She wasn't wearing her Princess Gale costume anymore, but a simple pair of white cotton panties and a large t-shirt. Naruto shuddered when her breasts rubbed against his arm, and he realized with a start that she wasn't wearing a bra. And was her leg rubbing against his morning erection? What the hell? When did this happen? How did this happen? Stop shouting. You're making my headache worse. Sorry. But, seriously, what happened last night? TCH. Naruto realized with some annoyance that Jiraiya was still around, and thus decided to get rid of him. Cage Bunshin. Several shadow clones appeared and rushed Jiraiya, who grinned like a loon as he began destroying them with a series of well-placed kicks. He didn't even use his hands, which were still writing in his notebook. You're gold, kid. Pure gold. Shut up, you dirty old pervert, Naruto hissed. Get out of here. Alright, I know when I've overstayed my welcome. Jiraiya snapped his book closed. I've gotten all the research material I need anyway. Have fun, brat. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Jiraiya left the room, closing the door behind him. Naruto glared at the door some more, as if he could still see Jiraiya. TCH. Damn perv. I'll say. Who knew someone as famous as Jiraiya was so lecherous, a voice said. I know, Naruto agreed. You'd think he'd show a little more self-restraint when Naruto stopped talking. His eyes widened. He turned his head and found a pair of blue eyes staring back at him. Ah, I can totally explain this. I highly doubt that. Koyuki's voice seeped amusement. You drank even more than I did. I doubt you even remembered what happened last night. Naruto withheld a grimace. Koyuki was right about that. He really didn't remember a thing. Does that mean you remember what happened last night? That's right, but I'm not telling. TCH. Naruto clicked his tongue and made to get out of bed, but soon realized he couldn't because Koyuki still had him in her grasp. Don't move. I'm rather comfortable right now and would rather not get up. What about your filming? The director's gonna be shouting for you soon, ya know. Despite his words, Naruto still laid back down on the bed, allowing Koyuki to rest against him. It's still early, Koyuki justified. The director won't be awake for at least another hour, so I've got time to kill. If you say so. Naruto decided to not let himself be bothered by what was happening, even though a part of him felt really uncomfortable by his situation. Why was Koyuki so comfortable sharing her bed with him anyways? By the way, Koyuki started, causing Naruto to shift his attention to her. Did you mean what you said last night? That you weren't gonna try and convince me to become the princess of Yuki no Kuni again? Of course I did. Naruto closed his eyes and mumbled. You can't force choices onto someone, and honestly, what you do with your life isn't really any of my business. I was hired to protect you, nothing more. I see. For some reason, Koyuki smiled at him. And if you were in my position, what would you do? Do you mean would I try to overthrow my uncle and take my place as the daimyo? Yes. Naruto thought about it for a moment before coming up with his answer. Yes, I would. If it were me, there's no way I could just sit by while some douchebag sits on my throne, especially not if all the things I've heard about Dodo are true. I don't know about you, but I hate it when people walk all over me and try to take what's mine. But, it's just like I said, I'm not here to make you do anything. I'm here to protect you. If you decide not to teach your uncle a lesson, then that's your choice. However, if you decide that you do want to take your kingdom back, then just let me know and I'll shove a Rasengan right up your uncle's ass for you. That was a very disturbing image you just gave me, Koyuki stated flatly, to which Naruto merely responded with a shrug. XOX. Within the darkened throne room, Nadare knelt before Dodo, the absolute ruler of Yuki no Kuni. He did not look up, but remained on bended knee with his head bowed in apology. So, Jiraiya and his apprentice proved to be too much for you, and now Fubuki and Mizore are dead. Dodo said in a deep, bass rumble. Nader tried not to grimace at the blunt assessment. That is, correct, Dodo-sama. Fubuki and Mizore became overconfident and it cost them their lives. He did not mention his own failures. Dodo did not take kindly to failure. It was better to place the blame on someone else than take the blame himself. He was sure Fubuki and Mizore wouldn't mind. It seems that I was correct. Those two are more than a match for you, Dodo mused. Nader gritted his teeth. It looks like you two are up, the daimyo said to the shadowy figures standing in the background. I do not care if Koyuki is dead or alive, but I want you to bring me that hex crystal. Hey, Hidan's mouth stretched into a twisted parody of a smile. It looks like I finally get to kill something. I was beginning to get impatient. You're always impatient, Kakazu muttered. TCH. And you're a killjoy. Nader glared at the floor as the 2S rank shinobi bickered. He would not let those two mercenaries grab the glory meant for him. XOX. It took 2 more days before they reached the port town. Naruto stuck with Koyuki for the rest of their time at sea. It seemed his words had earned her trust, or maybe she simply enjoyed the fact that he had no intention of making her do something she didn't want to do. He honestly didn't know, but he was grateful. The fact that she no longer glared at him, or did her best to avoid him, meant protecting her was a lot easier than before. The groups disembarked one by one. The crew members charged with the props did all the heavy lifting, using machines to unload the larger props. Several people controlled trolleys and pushed them down the ramp and onto the docks. The director and his cameraman, who was always by the director's side, stood near Jiraiya, who had his arms crossed as he watched everyone unload at least until he caught sight of Naruto and Koyuki disembarking together. Then he gave his apprentice a lecherous grin and a thumbs up. Honestly, Naruto wrinkled his nose in disgust. You wake up in a girl's bed once and your sensei acts like you've been sleeping around. Well, you were caught in an awfully compromising position, Koyuki said. The woman's got a point. Naruto stumbled as he walked down the ramp. I don't want to hear that from you, he said, though just who he was talking to, Kyuubi or Koyuki, even he didn't know. After all of the crew members, props and equipment had been unloaded, the group loaded them up into several 4-wheeled contraptions made of wood and metal. The director called them 4-wheelers, and said they'd been created by Yuki no Kuni to transport officials and famous individuals around. Naruto ended up in the vehicle with Koyuki, while Jiraiya went with Sandayu and the director. This is so cool, Naruto exclaimed as he pressed his face to the glass and stared out at the winter wonderland laid out before them. You're like a kid, Koyuki chuckled from her place next to him. TCH. Whatever. Let me have my fun. Naruto pressed his face further against the glass, fogging it up with his breath. This is the first time I've ever seen so much snow before. It's everywhere. Do you really find snow that fascinating? Well, maybe not fascinating, but it is different from what I'm used to. Konoha's weather is mild all year round. It never really changes. That's why I like traveling so much. It lets me see places and things that I've never seen before. I guess that makes sense. Do you not like the snow, Yuki-chan? Not really. Naruto was about to turn around after hearing her words, but Koyuki moved first. His entire body went stiff when she leaned into him, setting her head near his and looking out the window. Actually, I really hate snow. It's cold and frozen, an uncaring wasteland. My heart feels like it's become frozen like this snow. Naruto ignored the breasts pressing into his back. Thanks to that damn vixen in his mind, he had some experience with seduction, so it was easier than it might have been. If that's the case, then all you need is to find someone or something that can warm it up. Oh. Koyuki's lecherous grin from back when she was drunk returned, but this time, it looked quite a bit more fetching. Naruto assumed it was because she wasn't drunk this time. Are you offering yourself for the position? Naruto's scowl did an admirable job of hiding his blush. No, even if I wanted to, which I don't. He quickly added upon seeing the mile-wide grin on Koyuki's face. I'm a shinobi for Konoha. There's no way a relationship between us would work. Are you sure that's the real reason you're saying that? Of course. Well, if you say so. Koyuki shrugged and stopped pressing herself against him. In any case, I was thinking more like having a purpose. A purpose? Yeah. Naruto nodded. I was once told that having no purpose is the worst thing ever. It leaves you feeling empty and unfulfilled. There's nothing worse than not having a purpose. So what's your purpose? Naruto opened his mouth to say, to become Hokage, of course. But quickly shut it when he remembered something vital: he might never become Hokage. Kyuubi had spoken about this at great length, how an immortal becoming Hokage would cause problems. The title of Hokage was meant to be passed down. What's more, if an immortal became Hokage, then it meant they would have absolute authority over Konoha for the rest of time. How long would it take before he got drunk off that kind of power? No, perhaps it was better if he didn't become Hokage. To protect the people I love. Naruto turned to give Koyuki a grin. That's all I could ever ask for. Whether it was because his answer stunned her, or for reasons he couldn't fathom, Koyuki said nothing. She offered him a soft, "Thank you," and then leaned back in her seat, a contemplative expression on her face. Naruto returned to looking out the window. But he could no longer see the snow. XOX. As their vehicles exited the tunnel, the cavern opened into a snow-covered mountainside. Glittering white powder coruscated with light. Leaves rustled and trees swayed. A stiff breeze blew through the clearing created by the makeshift roadway, knocking snow off branches and causing it to whirl about in the wind. Overhead, the sun shone down, a bright obnoxious ball of flames that caused one to squint after being cooped up in the dark for so long. Well, Naruto started, opening the door and climbing out, his feet crunching the snow-covered ground. I guess this is our stop, Yuki-chan. Koyuki gave him an uneasy smile as she took the hand he held out to her. I guess so. She climbed daintily down and Naruto let go of her hand. He turned from Koyuki and looked around. The air was chilly and crisp. When he inhaled, his nose felt a sharp sting, the bite of frost, which agitated his sinuses. It hasn't changed, Koyuki murmured as she looked around. Even after all this time, nothing has changed. Is that a good thing or bad thing? Asked Naruto. Bad. I hate the snow. I don't think that's necessarily true. Naruto smiled gently at the girl, as if he could see through her. I don't think it's the snow that you dislike, but what happened to you while you were here? Koyuki said nothing, allowing him to continue. Either way, you don't need to worry. I'll protect you with my life. Grinning widely, he gave her a thumbs up. Koyuki looked at him for several seconds, and then looked away. I'll be counting on you, then. Hehe, leave it to me. Yuki. The director called. We're getting ready to film. I'm coming. Snow crunched against Koyuki's heeled shoes as she walked over to the director. The other actors and cast converged and the director began doing what he did best. By his side, the faithful cameraman rolled the film as if he were making a documentary instead of a Princess Gale movie. You and Koyuki Haim seem to be getting along, a voice said from behind him. Naruto turned to see Jiraiya standing on his left, arms crossed and a lecherous grin plastered all over his face. Don't look too into it, Naruto said, turning away from Jiraiya to look back at the cast. He could see Koyuki getting ready to act in her role as Princess Gale. It's not like we're super close or anything. She just appreciates that I'm not trying to force her into doing something she doesn't want to do. And are you sure that she doesn't want to save this country? No, I'm positive that she does want to save this country. Naruto continued watching Koyuki as she acted for the camera, but she's afraid. Afraid of failing, afraid of being alone, afraid of losing everything all over again. She's running away. So why haven't you worked your magic yet? When Naruto gave Jiraiya a dumbfounded look, the older man sighed. Honestly, times like these makes me wish you weren't still a brat. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Asked a suitably belligerent Naruto. Jiraiya opened his mouth to answer, but a steady stream of chakra caused Naruto to stop listening. He glanced down at the ground. The snow was melting, turning to water and quickly washing away. Beneath that layer of snow was metal. Steel tracks meant for a train. Naruto knelt down and ran a hand over the tracks, his fingers tingling like lightning was racing through them. Kyuubi. Yes, I know. There's chakra running through these tracks. Something is coming. Naruto shot to his feet and shouted at the people still filming. Everyone, get out of the way. Take cover and hide. There's something massive coming this way. The cast members didn't seem to know what to make of his words. Naruto clicked his tongue when he realized this and created several dozen clones, which moved off in all directions. Some turned on the vehicles and moved them off the tracks, others began shoving the crew along. Jiraiya had responded to his words quickly, helping the clones get people out of the way. Meanwhile, the real Naruto rushed up to Koyuki, scooped the woman into his arms, and ran off to find some cover. The woman was so shocked that she couldn't do more than squawk as he raced off the track and hid behind an outcropping of snow-covered rocks. Hey! Koyuki finally regained her bearings as he set her down. What was that all about? Shish. Naruto raised a hand to his lips, gesturing for silence. Something is coming. Wah. Koyuki didn't manage to complete her sentence, because in that moment, a loud rumbling filled the air. Naruto's eyes narrowed as it burst from the cavernous passage that they themselves had used minutes prior, a machine running along the tracks. It shimmered in the light, a long contraption of glistening steel composed of several different cars. Steam billowed from the front, shooting out of a chimney like smoke rising from a forest fire. A train. Naruto had heard about these technological wonders, but he'd never seen one in real life. The train came to a stop several meters from their location. A large hatch opened in the back car, and from within that car a platform rose, revealing several figures. The first, a man seated on a miniature throne. To his left, the familiar figure of their previous foe with purple hair, the one who got away. The right, two figures bedecked in black cloaks with red clouds. Akatsuki. Naruto narrowed his eyes. What are they doing here? Koyuki Haim, it's been a long time, the man on the throne said. Come on out. Let's have a look at you. Koyuki stiffened where she sat behind a rock. Naruto placed a hand on her shoulder. Don't worry, Yuki. Remember what I told you. No matter what happens, I'll protect you. Koyuki stared at him, wide-eyed and frightened. Yet, as she looked into his eyes, her body slowly relaxed. She nodded ever so slightly, causing him to crack a grin. Now then, why don't we see what these people want? Naruto stood up and walked out from behind a boulder. He ignored the purple-haired one, having already determined that he was the weakest, and instead focused on the other three. The one sitting on the throne was a big man with a square face and a large jaw. His small beady eyes were offset by thin wrinkles that ran down his face. His entire form was covered by a thick white cloak that was draped across him like a cape. The other two were most definitely members of Akatsuki. One of them he couldn't see much of, because the man's entire body and face was covered. The other, however, had slicked back white hair, pale skin, purple eyes and carried a giant triple-bladed scythe. Are you Dodo? Asked Naruto. I am, the man sitting on the throne said, and who might you be? I'm the guy who'd like you to get your big-ass train out of our way. Naruto's response was swift and blunt. I don't know if you've noticed yet, but we're kinda in the middle of filming a movie here. Kekiki, the man with slicked back hair laughed. This brat's got a mouth on him. That is the Kyuubi brat, if I am not mistaken, the other one said, his voice gravelly and deep. He doesn't have much of a bounty on his head, but since we're here, we might as well capture him for the leader. Naruto glared at the two Akatsuki members. Blood pumped through his veins, accelerating as adrenaline was injected into his bloodstream. He could feel it, that burning excitement bubbling up from the back of his mind. He always felt it right before a battle. Doto Kazuhana. A shout in the distance stopped the fight that had been about to break out. Today, your reign of terror ends. Everyone looked up. There, standing atop a snowy slope, stood Sandayu Asama. Garbed in the armor of a samurai and waving around a sword, the manager of Koyuki was surrounded by his fellow samurai. 5 years we have waited for this moment, for the day where Koyuki Haim would return and claim her rightful place as our ruler. Now it has come at last and we, the faithful samurai who once served Sosetsu-sama, have come to claim vengeance. For Koyuki Haim. With a resounding battle cry, the many samurai unsheathed their swords and charged down the slope. What the hell are you people doing? Naruto heard Koyuki's shout. Do you all want to die? He looked at the train. Several sections of each car had opened up, revealing what could only be some kind of projectile launcher. Naruto didn't know what those things shot, but he knew that whatever it was wouldn't be good for anyone's health. He needed to do something. Not so fast. Eyes widening, Naruto threw himself backwards just in time to miss being sliced apart by a scythe. It struck the ground instead, becoming embedded deeply into the snow and probably the ground, too. The man gripping it lifted the weapon back up and placed it on his shoulder. I can't have you interfering, the man said, especially since I'm getting bored. His lips stretched into a grin. Besides, the leader's been on our case to capture one of you Jinchuriki. Might as well be you. Naruto gritted his teeth. He looked over at Samurai and was just in time to see several hundred kunai get launched from within the train. Doten, Doryuheiki. A wall made of earth jutted up from the ground. It spanned nearly 25 meters in diameter and was more than thick enough to protect the samurai from impalement. Standing atop the massive wall, Jiraiya hopped from one foot to the other. Did you think the great Jiraiya-sama would let you kill the people he's supposed to protect under his watch? Think again. The great Jiraiya-sama is a protector to all the innocent, especially the ladies, and he won't let you have your way. Naruto would have rolled his eyes at his sensei's grandiose speech, but the scythe trying to impale him through the head kept his attention on his opponent. He wove around the weapon, which cut through the air with a loud whistle. Fortunately, the guy didn't know how to wield it, he just swung the weapon around in a haphazard manner. Dodging this guy's reckless swings was easy. With a kunai in each hand, Naruto avoided swing after swing. The scythe cut through the air above him as he ducked. It dug into the ground when he shoulder rolled out of the way. The Akatsuki member came in swinging, but Naruto used his kunai to deflect the attacking weapon, creating a series of sparks that splashed against the ground. Hey, you're pretty good at dodging, the man said. And you suck at fighting, Naruto shot back. The Akatsuki member opened his mouth to speak, but Naruto beat him to the punch. Kamikaze Saikan. Blood flew from the Akatsuki member's mouth along with several teeth and nose as Naruto's wind jutsu slammed into his face. The man with slicked back hair stumbled backwards, and Naruto capitalized on this opportunity to end the fight. Channeling wind chakra into his kunai, he tossed the blade right at the man's head. More blood splattered along the ground, tainting the snow, as the kunai went straight through his head, traveling through one side and out the other. The Akatsuki member stood there, swaying on his feet before, with little more than a thud, he fell onto his back. Naruto waited for several seconds. When it became clear his opponent had been defeated, he turned around and began walking away. Naruto. He's not dead. Naruto rolled along the ground as Kyuubi shouted in his mind. A squealing sound not dissimilar to grinding reached his ears. He leapt back onto his feet and spun around to see the guy he'd just killed yank his scythe out of the ground and set it on his shoulder. A large hole in his forehead continued to gush blood. That fucking hurt, shit for brains, the white-haired man said. I'm gonna fucking kill you for that. He licked the blades of his scythe. Gonna cut you up real good. Naruto didn't know what was going on. He had no clue how this man was still alive, when his brain matter should have been splattered all over the snow. But he wasn't about to let this man know that. You're welcome to try, Naruto grinned, but I can guarantee you'll lose. Huh. Let's see if you can back up those words, brat. The Akatsuki member swung his scythe as Naruto raised his kunai. A clash of sparks signaled a renewal of their battle. XOX. Jongu. Doten. Yomi Numa. Thousands of dark black threads tried to impale Jiraiya through the chest, but they quickly retracted when the ground underneath Kakuzu's feet turned into a swamp. The Akatsuki accountant leapt into the air and back several meters. Meanwhile, Jiraiya stood back up from where he'd been crouched on the ground. Jiraiya of the Sannin, Kakuzu said calmly, as if he wasn't talking to one of the most powerful shinobi in the elemental nations. I was wondering when you and I would meet. You have quite the bounty on your head. I'll be sure to collect. You must be Kakuzu, the infamous bounty hunter formerly from Takigakure, an S-rank nuke nin who was said to have fought against the Shodai Hashirama himself. Jiraiya grinned as he raised his hand and gave a, come on, gesture. You can try and collect the bounty on my head, but it won't do much good. You're too old and decrepit to even think of fighting against a young stud like me. Kakuzu didn't respond to the taunting. He only began making hand seals. We shall see. Doten, Domu, Kaiten, Enden. Earth met fire. Jutsu clashed against Jutsu. The battle between S-ranked shinobi had begun. XOX. Something was wrong with this Hidan fellow. It could have been how none of the damage Naruto did stopped him for more than a second, or it could have had something to do with his insane cackling. Either way, Naruto knew that there was something seriously, insanely, utterly wrong with this guy. Come on, you little fucking twerp. Is that all you've got? This guy's got a mouth on him. And is it just me, or has he gotten faster? Hidan blitzed Naruto with a powerful series of incredibly quick slashes. Naruto was forced to backpedal when he realized that he could no longer match Hidan's speed. The white-haired man continued chasing after Naruto, laughing like a madman as he swung his scythe around like it weighed less than a bowl of ramen. I need to do something. Maybe if I created some kind of opening. Naruto tossed a kunai at Hidan and went through a series of hand seals. Kunai Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. What had once been a single kunai became 20. All of them were heading for Hidan, who didn't even bother covering his vital organs as he rushed forward. Blood spurted from fresh wounds, pouring down his body like streams. Several kunai had even pierced vital organs, but Hidan didn't stop moving forward. He was relentless. "Ha! You think that will work on me? You can't kill me." His plan to make Hidan halt in his tracks failed. Naruto decided to try something else. He didn't have many jutsu in his arsenal, but what jutsu he did have were pretty powerful. One jutsu in particular might work wonders on someone like this. Kitsune Bai. Fire lit up within his hands. A burst of ethereal flames engulfed his palms, coalescing into a tiny ball. Naruto tossed the balls at Hidan, who didn't have the good sense to dodge and took them head-on. One slammed into his chest and the other detonated in his face. The first explosion knocked Hidan back, while the second sent him crashing into the ground. Knowing better than to give his opponent a chance to recover, Naruto leapt into the air, his body twisting in a corkscrew until he was perpendicular to the ground. Wind gathered around his fists. Just as he passed over Hidan, he unleashed a swift double punch. Suin Kamikaze no Tatsumaki. Two powerful tornadoes flew from his hands and slammed into Hidan. Snow shot from the ground like geysers, clouding his vision. Naruto finished his flip and landed several meters away. He turned around and looked at where Hidan had been. The snow cloud had cleared, allowing him to see the massive crater that his attack had created. Did that kill him? Naruto. He's underground. What? The ground underneath his feet was split apart by a triple-bladed scythe. Naruto jumped back and avoided being gruesomely impaled. A hand came out of the ground next, followed by the rest of Hidan's body. He leapt out of the ground, landing on his feet and grinning. Almost had ya there. Damn it. What will it take to kill this guy? Ready or not, here I come. Shit. Hidan attacked Naruto with a powerful swipe. Naruto raised his kunai to block the attack, but then doubled over when Hidan surprised him with a powerful kick. Naruto could practically feel his ribcage snapping as he was sent sailing through the air. He hit the ground hard. The world spun around, tumbling in and out of focus until his back crashed against something solid and then everything went black. When Naruto regained his vision, it was to see a scythe swinging at him. Naruto was given no time to react as the scythe cut into him with ease. Poof. And then Naruto went up in a puff of smoke. What the? Hidan was given no time to finish his sentence as something impossibly strong slammed into the back of his head. He plowed face first into the rock formation that Naruto had previously been laid out on. The rocks cracked and dented, abrasions spreading like spider webs from the point of impact. Naruto, who appeared directly behind Hidan, went through a series of hand seals. Fuden. Shinkugyoku. Naruto exhaled deeply, shooting several bullets of wind chakra from his mouth. The spheres of wind were launched in a widespread patterns, making it impossible to dodge all of them without aid from a dojutsu. Hidan had no chance. The wind spheres tore into him like his body was made of soggy paper. Blood splattered across the ground as holes appeared on his skin, revealing the red muscles, fleshy organs, and white bone within. Fuck. Hidan swore. That fucking hurts. He turned around and glared at Naruto. You're gonna fucking get it now, you fucking little turd. Did you just call me a turd? So what if I did? Shouted a now red-faced Hidan. It's okay to call you a turd since that's exactly what you are. With that, Hidan rushed at Naruto once again. XOX. Koyuki sat on the sidelines, hiding behind a rocky outcropping, watching the battle take place. While some part of her scoffed at the pointlessness of these battles, another admired Naruto's strength as he fought against the ninja her uncle had hired. While the other ninja had yet to be defeated, it was clear to her that Naruto's enemy was the one taking the beating. If he's this powerful, then maybe he can. Koyuki banished the thought before it could fully form. There was no point in dwelling on such thoughts. She had made her bed. Now all that was left to do was lie in it. Hello, Koyuki Haim, a voice said from behind her. Eyes widening, Koyuki tried to turn, but something powerful slammed into the back of her neck. The last thing she saw was the white snow-covered ground rising up to meet her. Then darkness embraced her. XOX. Naruto was breathing heavily. Sweat gathered along his forehead and dripped into his eyes, stinging them. He was getting tired. It was a first for him. Being a Jinchuriki and a not fully human one at that, Naruto had incredibly high amounts of stamina. He could fight for hours, flinging jutsu left and right, and not have to worry about exhaustion. Yet as the battle with Hidan progressed, exhaustion was exactly what he felt. This guy. The man came at him, scythe swinging recklessly. Naruto gritted his teeth as he threw himself backwards, but that did little to stop Hidan. The blades of the scythe suddenly extended as he threw it at Naruto, who raised the kunai in his hands in time to block. However, there was so much power put behind the attack that he was sent skidding along the snow-covered ground. He's relentless. Hidan laughed madly as he came in trying to carve Naruto up like grains of wheat. Left with no other option, Naruto was forced to block the scythe bearing down on him and ended up receiving a brutal kick to the chest for good measure. One of his floating ribs snapped as he was sent flying. It healed seconds later, but the pain distracted him enough that he almost missed the scythe falling from the sky like an avenging kami. Gritting his teeth, Naruto raised his arm and launched a chain from inside of his sleeve. It wrapped around the scythe, and Naruto yanked on the chain, knocking the weapon off course and sending it crashing into the ground. His back slammed into the earth moments later, and all of the air was expelled from his lungs in a loud whoosh. Naruto was given no time to recover. Hidan fell from the sky moments later, and he was forced to roll along the ground, narrowly avoiding the double heel stomp that would have surely caved in his chest. If this keeps up, I might have to use that. Kyuubi must have heard his thoughts, because she spoke up seconds later. I wouldn't transform unless it becomes absolutely necessary. You have a limit to how long you can use it before it corrupts your body. You haven't trained with it enough yet. Naruto dodged a swing coming his way, grimacing as it sliced through several strands of hair. I may not have much of a choice here. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Several clones appeared at his side. Two of them went after Hidan, to distract him, while the other two hung back with Naruto, who held out his hand and formed a Rasengan. The two clones added their own chakra to the mix. Rather than simply helping him form a jutsu, however, they reinforced it with their chakra, one adding extra rotations and the other simply making it bigger. The clones attacking Hidan were dispelled seconds after. Attacking, but by that point it was too late. Udoma Rasengan. Naruto slammed the Rasengan into Hidan's face. The white-haired Akatsuki member was engulfed in a gigantic explosion. Blue chakra detonated. Bright flashes of blinding light burst in front of Naruto's eyes like fireworks at a festival. Snow and smoke and steam blasted outward from the explosion, sending Naruto flying several meters back. He flipped around, landing on his feet, sliding along the snowy ground until he sent chakra to his feet. He looked back at where the explosion took place and was surprised to see Hidan still standing though not wholly intact. Fuck, that fucking hurt. Hidan was missing several body parts. His left arm was no longer there. It was missing from the shoulder down. Blood gushed from the stump like a water jutsu gone out of control, drenching his entire side. He was also missing a leg, his right. The entire calf had been blown clean off, and Naruto could see the bones jutting out from between the muscle fibers, which dangled from the missing knee-like jellyfish tentacles. Little shit, Hidan scowled at Naruto, his missing right eye making it look 10,000 times more menacing. I'm gonna fucking kill you, you little fucking shit. Before Hidan could try to make good on that promise, another figure landed near him, the other Akatsuki member. Hidan, we're leaving, Kakuzu said. What? Hidan turned a startled gaze on Kakuzu. Now, you fucking kidding me? I still have to pay this fucker back for blowing me up. You cannot do anything in your condition, Kakuzu replied mildly. Our objective is complete, so there's no need for us to stay here. Let's go. Kakuzu did not give Hidan any time to reply. He wrapped the other man in black threads that snaked out from his sleeves. Even so, Naruto could hear the profanity spewing from the white-haired man's mouth. Kakuzu didn't even pay Naruto any attention as he leapt away, landing back on the train, which soon took off. Hey! Naruto shouted as he realized what was happening. Where do you two think you're going? Get back here. But they didn't come back. The train continued moving, getting farther and farther away. Kuchios. Yutai Kuzushi no Jutsu. A large burst of smoke appeared over the train. From within the cloud of white, a massive toad fell, landing directly in front of the train. For a moment, Naruto thought that would be the end of it, but then the last cart on the end suddenly disconnected from the rest. The train crashed into the giant toad, which unleashed a loud croak, while a giant air balloon came out from the top of the last car and expanded quickly. The air balloon lifted the car off the tracks. The car went over the cliff and descended to the depths below. Naruto ran to the edge of the cliff and was just in time to see a giant zeppelin rise into the sky. It must have been on standby in case Dodo and his goons needed to make a quick getaway. He glared at the zeppelin as it grew smaller in the distance, until it vanished entirely. Looks like they got away. Jiraiya walked up to Naruto's side. Seems that way, Naruto grunted. And Dodo has hired Akatsuki, Jiraiya added. Yeah, that Kakuzu guy was a tricky opponent, Jiraiya continued, humming thoughtfully as he stroked his chin. Though I'm pretty sure I know of a way to beat him now that we've fought. How about you? I don't know, Naruto admitted. That guy the first was fighting. Hidan. Right. Him. Anyway, that guy's not a very good fighter. He's fast and strong sure, but he doesn't have much technique. He just swings that scythe of his around recklessly. If it were simply a matter of skill, I'm sure that I could beat him. I take it there's something else to him that made defeating him difficult. That's putting it mildly. Naruto snorted. I don't know what's up with him, but for some reason, I couldn't kill the guy. No blew holes in his chest and threw a kunai straight through his head, yet he didn't die. No matter how grievous the injury I inflicted on him, he just kept coming, rising back up like a freaking zombie. I guess that explains his nickname, Jiraiya mused absently. I had always wondered why they call him Hidan the Immortal. Not being able to die despite the injuries you describe would explain it. Great. Naruto clicked his tongue in clear agitation. So, I'm fighting an immortal now. That's just what I wanted to do on this mission. But still, what are the chances of me finding another immortal? Is he the same as me? Doubtful, Kyuubi answered immediately. You are unique, a human who has been doused with so much of my chakra that your body's very composition has changed. Your very cells have been charged with a power that humans were never meant to wield, which is what gives you your incredible regenerative abilities. The way you received this power must also be factored in. Only my Jinchuriki could gain immortality this way. Even if another Jinchuriki went through the same thing that you did, they would not have gained immortality. That man is not a Jinchuriki. Furthermore, his chakra is completely human, though there is something odd about it. What's so odd about it? I am not sure. It just didn't feel natural. I'm not sure I follow. I mean that, even though his chakra felt human, it felt unnatural, like the chakra didn't belong to him, or maybe like it was artificially created. Naruto didn't really understand what Kyuubi was saying. Had Hidan's chakra belonged to someone else and he'd stolen it? That was what it sounded like she was saying, but at the same time, he couldn't say for sure if that was what she meant. Oi, brat, you listening to me? No, Naruto said, snapping back to reality at the sound of Jiraiya's voice. TCH, disrespectful brat. Dirty old man. Anyway, let's make sure everyone is alright. Jiraiya turned back to the film crew and the samurai that had almost been killed by Dodo. Naruto followed his sensei's advice and also looked back at the crowd of people. It was only upon taking a quick head count that he realized someone was missing. Where is Yuki-chan? XOX. Koyuki Kazuhana stirred. She felt groggy. Her head was pounding, like something had rattled her skull and damaged the gray matter within. She tried to open her eyes, but the light hitting her retina made her wince, like when you stepped into the light after spending several hours in a dark theater. The dull throb in her head increased to staccato bursts. Are you finally awake, Koyuki Haim? A horrifyingly familiar voice said. Koyuki's eyes snapped open. Despite the stinging pain from the light, she stared in horror at the person sitting across from her. That was also when she realized that she'd been bound, her hands tied behind her back and her legs strapped to a chair. Dodo. It's been a long time since I last laid eyes on you. Dodo's lips twitched, as if amused by the way she flinched. You've grown quite beautiful. Don't try to flatter me. Koyuki tried to pretend the quaver in her voice didn't exist. What do you want? Now, my dear, Dodo said in a patronizing tone. There is no need to be so hostile. I merely wanted to speak with. Fuck. A curse interrupted Dodo before he could go any further. Koyuki and Dodo turned their heads simultaneously. Hidan was leaning against the wall, the floor underneath him drenched in blood, a puddle of carmine which continued to expand. Kakuzu stood next to him, black threads slithering out of his sleeves and reattached Hidan's many missing body parts back on. Unfortunately, it could not do much about his missing eye, which had been blown apart by Naruto's Udama Rasengan. That fucking hurts, Kakuzu. Can't you be more gentle? No, Kakuzu did not stop stitching the white-haired man back together. This is your fault for allowing yourself be torn apart like that. I won't baby you because of you're an idiot. Fucking money-grubbing little shit. Religious zealot without a modicum of common sense. After staring at the two Akatsuki members, who had now degraded to childishly insulting each other, Dodo and Koyuki looked back at each other. As I was saying, I merely wanted to speak with you, Dodo continued as if he hadn't been interrupted. I don't believe you, Koyuki snapped a quick reply. If all you wanted to do was talk, then you wouldn't have had your henchman kidnap me. What are you really after? Dodo snorted. Clever girl. Perhaps a little too clever. You're right, I am after something, the Hex Crystal. The Hex Crystal. The legacy of the Kazahana family, I believe the key to finding it lies within the Hex Crystal, Dodo explained. After I wrested control of this country from your father, I searched high and low for the Kazahana treasure, but could find no trace of it. For many years I worried that my brother had squandered it on his hobbies of tinkering with machines, until I hit upon a clue: the Rainbow Glacier. There is a keyhole there, one uniquely shaped to match the Hex Crystal. That is why I need that crystal. With it, I can finally unlock the Kazahana treasure and use the vast wealth to increase our country's power. In time, we'll even be able to compete with the four great nations. Koyuki remained silent while Dodo calmed down. She didn't know about any of the things he was talking about, but she knew that he only wanted this treasure to increase his own power. Not like it matters to me. I don't care what he does with this country, she told herself. So, all you want is the Hex Crystal. That is correct, and you'll let me go if I give it to you. Of course. Koyuki already knew that he was lying. She could see it in his eyes. She could hear it in his voice. His body language spoke to her. As an actress, she was well versed in the art of discerning truth from lies, and right now, everything about Dodo screamed that he was lying. Still, what choice do I have? If I don't do this? An image of Naruto appeared within her mind. Don't worry. No matter what happens, I'll protect you. Leer. She took the necklace dangling from around her neck and placed it on Dodo's outstretched hand. The man grinned as he brought the object close to his face, a grin that abruptly vanished when he got his first good look at the crystal in his hand. What is this? He bellowed. What? Koyuki's eyes widened when Dodo glared at her. Do you take me for a fool, girl? This isn't the Hex Crystal. It's a fake. He tossed the object away. The fake Hex Crystal slammed against the wall, where it disappeared in a small puff of white smoke. But that can't be fake. It has to be real. The only way it could be fake is in. She trailed off, her eyes widening. Naruto. Jiraiya's apprentice, Nadare, standing behind Dodo, said. He is the blonde one who fought and demolished Hidan. He didn't demolish me, you fucking ga. Fuck, Kakuzu. The hell is your problem? You're my problem. Now shut up and let me work. Before coming Jiraiya's apprentice, I hear he was a genin under Kakashi Hataki's command. The copy ninja. Dodo looked interested. The very same. Nadare nodded. Kakashi was there when you overthrew your brother. It would not surprise me if he told Naruto what he knows, in which case, it would make sense that Naruto would replace the Hex Crystal with a fake. Naruto, he must have replaced the Hex Crystal with a fake while she'd been unconscious. Why would he do that? Was it because he didn't trust her? Was there some other reason? Why did she even care? There's nothing we can do, then, Dodo determined coldly. We'll simply have to lure them to my castle. Nadare, escort our guest to her chambers. Of course, Dodo-sama. Nadare bowed to his master before grabbing Koyuki roughly by the arm and yanking her to her feet. Come along, princess. As Nadare escorted her out of the room, Dodo left her with a parting comment. Congratulations, Koyuki Haim. You get to live a little while longer. She wasn't sure that was a good thing. Chapter 48. Face off in the land of snow. They had been forced to take shelter for the night. Yuki no Kuni was a cold country. Its days were cold, and its nights were even more so. Anyone who tried to traverse the icy plains and snow-covered forests during the twilight hours would surely die from hypothermia long before they reached their destination. Naruto sat within a room, a candle the only source of light. He wasn't alone. Jiraiya and Sandayu sat with him. Both of them wore severe expressions, the kind that Naruto rarely saw on his sensei's face. While Jiraiya often cracked jokes in dangerous situations, the current situation warranted more gravity from them all. "We must rescue Princess Koyuki immediately," Sandayu said, his grave voice making Naruto's shoulders twitch. "There's no telling what might happen to her the longer she's left with that monster. We will rescue her, but we can't rush this." Jiraiya sat with his legs crossed. Tapping his index finger against his knee, the frown on his face was one that rarely appeared. "I doubt they'll kill her, not when she can prove to be such a useful bargaining chip. Thanks to Naruto replacing her necklace with a fake, they need to keep her alive in order to barter in exchange." Naruto reached into his shirt and pulled out Koyuki's necklace. It was attached to the other ones that he had. All of them glittered as the candlelight played off their multifaceted surface. "I wonder what's up with these necklaces. It does seem odd that they all look the same. I actually remember owning one of these." What? Really? It was a really long time ago. A rich merchant gave it to me when he was trying to ask my hand in marriage. Let me guess, you allowed him to make attempts at winning you over, and then you left after he'd given you everything that he owned. More or less. What should we do? Asked Sandayu. Naruto focused once more on the older man, who appeared to be fraught with worry. The lines of his face had creased more than usual. His skin, ashen and pale, gave him a ghastly pallor. Naruto supposed it was natural for the man to look like this. He could only imagine how awful it was to know that someone who was important to you had been taken hostage. "Our rescue operation will have to be done during the day," Jiraiya said. "My plan is for myself and your army to act as a distraction. Our goal will be to draw the enemy out. In particular, I would like to force Hidan and Kakuzu into battle with me. While we're dealing with Dodo's forces, Naruto will sneak in, rescue the princess, and then sneak back out." "Are you sure that's a good idea, Ero Sennin?" Naruto asked. "Not to be rude, but we're talking about 2S rank shinobi. Are you sure you're going to be enough to handle those two on your own? Are you doubting my skills?" Jiraiya asked, finally breaking into laughter. "You should know better than to doubt the great Jiraiya-sama. If you say so." Naruto shrugged. "In either event, killing them isn't in my game plan," Jiraiya admitted. "Those two aren't the type that you can just off like a couple of rookies. Both of them are called immortal for a reason. Kakuzu has been around since the time of the Shodai Hokage, and Hidan, well, you've already seen what he can do." Naruto didn't need a reminder. He remembered how he'd beheaded Hidan, but the bastard had still been alive even then. That shouldn't have been possible. Even Naruto, who'd gained a form of immortality, would die if his head was cut off. Jiraiya continued. "My plan is to hold them off long enough for you to rescue Koyuki, and then get your ass back to me. Once we've got them one-on-one, I'm sure we can get rid of them. Kakuzu might be difficult, since I don't know anything about him, but Hidan is actually pretty weak. From what I've seen, you can defeat him, if not kill him. If you can cut off and seal away his head, then you've won." Outside, the wind howled, causing the windows to rattle. Naruto frowned as he tried to ignore the sound and focus on the plan. While those two Akatsuki members were definitely a problem, they weren't the only one. "What about Nader and the other Yuki ninja?" Naruto asked. "If you're busy dealing with those two, then Nader can come out with a squad of shinobi and attack Sandayu's forces. If that happens, the entire battalion of samurai will be demolished. No offense to Sandayu and his men, but they were not shinobi, or even what he would call true samurai. Old veterans past their prime and young men who'd never experienced battle, that was what they were. People like that could not defeat shinobi of the caliber of Nader. Heck, even a regular Yuki ninja with those strange kunai launchers could decimate Sandayu and his forces. I don't think you will need to worry about that, Naruto-san." Sandayu pressed a hand to his chest as if to emphasize his point. Though we may not look it, our forces are strong, and our determination is stronger still. Naruto didn't want to be the one to tell this man that determination meant little in the grand scheme of things. Considering how most of his time at the academy he'd had nothing but his determination, telling someone else that it wouldn't matter felt like an awful thing to do. Fortunately, he didn't have to. Naruto brings up a good point. Jiraiya rubbed his chin. Nadare isn't a normal shinobi, and that chakra armor gives him a huge advantage in combat. He could probably defeat your forces on his own. This isn't even mentioning the technology that they have at their disposal. In a straight-up fight, I'm afraid your forces would be wiped out. Then why don't we change our tactics a bit, Naruto suggested. With that, he began to lay out his plan to the other two. XOX. Dotu sat on his throne, contemplating the most recent series of events. Two of his more powerful shinobi were dead, which left Nadare and a horde of cannon fodder to fight for him. That wasn't necessarily good, but he could always make better shinobi through human experimentation and mechanical augmentation. Beside him, Hidan and Kakazu stood silently. Fuck, I'm bored. Well, almost silently. Shut up, Hidan. Maybe I will if you can make me. Dotu would have sighed if that hadn't been so out of character for him. These two members of Akatsuki were annoying, but they were also strong. Either one could have destroyed Nadare, Fubuki, and Mizore in 1-on-3 combat if the mood struck them. Considering they were now dealing with Jiraiya of the Sannin and his apprentice, it was a good thing he'd possessed the foresight to hire them. Down below his elevated throne, Nadare knelt down before him. As one of the ninja who'd served him since before his inception, Nadare was his most loyal subordinate. As such, he was also the one who acted as his bodyguard. He wondered when those two shinobi would show up to rescue Princess Koyuki, who was even now being kept in the dungeon below the palace. He would have expected them to have shown up by now. Then again, this was Jiraiya they were up against. The man might have acted like a fool, but there was a reason people hailed him as one of the most powerful shinobi in the elemental nations. Just then, the doors to his throne room creaked open. A man dressed in the traditional white and gray garb of a Yuki ninja rushed into the room, moving before the throne and kneeling down. My lord, you bade us to tell you when Jiraiya of the Sannin was spotted. Our men have seen him moving toward the palace with an army of samurai. An army of samurai, you say, Dotu murmured. It must be that group that we almost killed a while back, Nadare said. What would you have me do, my lord? Dotu thought about the situation for a moment. This sounded a lot like a feint. Having a large army like that come in a full-on frontal assault, while normally sound, wouldn't work against his forces, and Jiraiya had to know that. In which case, Nadare, I want you to take our troops out and meet Jiraiya in combat. Destroy him. Yes, my lord, Nadare said. Whoa, 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 hold the fuck on, Hidan complained loudly. You want to use these dipshits in a fight and not me. What the fuck? I thought I'd finally be allowed to kill people, and now you're telling me that this bitch is going to fight instead. Shut up, Hidan, Kakazu snapped. We're not getting paid so you can gripe. I don't fucking care about getting paid. Jashin only needs to be paid in blood. Do not worry, Dotu assured Hidan, his face widening into a grin. I've got another plan for you too. XOX. Jiraiya stood on a cliff overlooking Dotu's palace. In truth, it didn't seem like a palace so much as it did a fortress. Massive spires jutted into the sky like stakes, a wall surrounded the entire compound, and the only way in was the large gate in front. From his bird's-eye view, he could see past the gate. Inside the compound were various buildings and facilities. Jiraiya couldn't begin to guess what they were, but the one in the center, which was massive compared to the others, was most definitely Dotu's private chamber. As he continued to watch, the gates opened and a horde of shinobi marched out. It seemed they were aware of Sandayu's forces. Of course, they probably weren't aware that those forces were all fakes. Either way, it was time to do his part. Hey, one ninja against an army. Jiraiya chuckled as he ran through a series of hand seals. I feel a strange sense of nostalgia. Kuchio's no Jutsu. The summoning jutsu took a lot of chakra on the best of days. However, in that moment, Jiraiya poured more chakra into it than he normally did. He'd been gathering his chakra ever since this morning just for this moment. Oddly enough, the smoke that normally clouded everything around him was surprisingly small. In fact, it was just 2 short puffs. What are ya doin' callin' us out to somewhere so cold? A croaking female voice shouted. Jiraiya boya, I hope you have a good explanation for why you're calling us out like this, another voice said. Two toads had appeared on his shoulders, one male and one female. The male was a green toad with white hair that appeared reminiscent of a mohawk. His eyebrows were thick and he had a small goatee. Two capes covered his body, a high-collared one and a simpler version on the inside. The female had a green underside and purple markings around her mouth and back. She was wearing what looked like a hairnet on her head, with hair rollers underneath. It made her appear old, which she was, old, that is. Like the other toad, she wore a high-collared cape and a simpler one underneath it. These were Fukusaku and Shima. They were the two great toad sages of Mount Myoboku and his teachers. I'm sorry for calling you out like this, Jiraiya said. But I need your help. Ah, you want to enter sage mode. I'm surprised. You always complained about how ugly it made you, Fukusaku said. Well, I'm not worrying about impressing the ladies today, so it's okay. HMPH. Shima snorted. Always trying to impress the ladies. You really are a lecher, Jiraiya-chan. Jiraiya smiled apologetically. I'm sorry. Anyway, would you two mind giving me a hand? Fine, fine, Shima clapped her hands together. We'll help ya out this time. But you know, Jiraiya boya, you really should learn to gather senjutsu on your own, Fukusaku said as he also clapped his hands together. Clapping his hands together as well, Jiraiya began gathering his chakra. I know. I plan on teaching Naruto to become a sage at some point, so it would be a good idea for me to get some more practice in. I'll start training again after this mission is over. Very well, Fukusaku said. Fine by me, Shima added. Gathering senjutsu was not a simple matter. Intense training was required. Even Jiraiya was barely able to use it, despite having trained for decades. That was because it required the gathering of nature chakra, which was dangerous to humans, and then combining the nature chakra with one's own chakra to create senjutsu chakra. Jiraiya still couldn't do it on his own. Hence the reason he needed to summon Shima and Fukusaku. He could feel the chakra gathering around him as Shima and Fukusaku helped direct the nature chakra's flow into him. His body became enhanced. He could feel power flowing through his muscles, could feel his chakra expanding. Senjutsu not only enhanced the body, but it made one's chakra far more potent. Jutsu became more powerful, attacks became more destructive, and the body became capable of withstanding a lot more punishment. Even though Jiraiya was a novice at senjutsu, he was still a force to be reckoned with whenever he used it. All right, he said with a grin. Let's go wreak havoc on these fools. With a crackling laugh, Jiraiya leapt down from the cliff and descended toward the army as they were emerging from the gate. Several kilometers away, the army that had caused the gates to open disappeared within a puff of smoke. XOX. Within a darkened tunnel, Naruto and several grizzled old men walked. One of them was Sandayu Asuma, who stayed beside Naruto, guiding him along the path they needed to take. It's a good thing you remembered this hidden passage, Naruto said. Otherwise sneaking into the palace would have been a hell of a lot harder. During Dotu's rebellion, this was the passage that I took to escape, Sandayu said. The flames of war were everywhere. Death had been around every corner. I remember looking for Princess Koyuki and, when I couldn't find her anywhere, I fled by myself. To this day, my greatest shame was not rescuing her, even though she had already been saved by that man. That man? Naruto asked. Sandayu moved the light in his hand, revealing the worn-down tunnel, which was made of old stones that were cracked and decayed. Water dripped from cracks in the ceiling, hardening into sharp icicles. Naruto didn't think any of them would fall. They looked steady. However, should they fall on one of these men, well, he didn't want to be the one to clean the floor of their blood. His name was Kakashi Hatake, Sandayu said. You might know of him, since he's a shinobi for Konoha. Naruto remembered telling Neji that fate was bullshit, but hearing what Sandayu said made him wonder if there might be such a thing as fate. What were the chances that he'd be taking on a mission in the same place as his first sensei? What was Kakashi-sensei doing here? He asked. He was apparently on a mission for Saozutsu-sama. Sandayu turned down a corner. Naruto and the others followed him. I'm not sure what it was, since I wasn't informed, but I hear it had something to do with a dream of Saozutsu-sama's. A dream? Yes. Naruto was tempted to ask more, but then they arrived at a stairwell. Dark and worn, derelict and rundown, cracks traveled along the gray stones, which appeared glassy. Ice. They were covered in ice. This is going to be a bit of a problem, Sandayu said. No, it won't. Naruto stepped forward. I can melt this ice easily enough. Just follow me. Naruto called upon his chakra, which he channeled to his feet. Steam rose all around him. The ground hissed, or rather, the ice that had been covering the ground hissed as it melted instantly, bursting into thick steam. What the? Sandayu stumbled backward, away from Naruto. My chakra is pretty potent. It's also quite hot. Naruto placed one foot on the staircase. The ice melted, hissed, and then evaporated within seconds. I can melt this ice pretty easily like this. Just follow a few seconds behind me. Right. Naruto walked up the stairs, which led into what, at first glance, appeared to be a hallway. It wasn't until he'd looked left and right that he realized this wasn't a hallway at all. It was a prison. Rusted bars stood in front of large cells that looked as if they hadn't been used in decades. Every cell was empty, filled with nothing but cobwebs, chains hanging from the ceiling, and decrepit bricks that seemed like they would fall apart if touched. Naruto and the others walked through the prison. They moved cautiously. There was no telling who might have been around, though it seemed as if this place had been abandoned long ago. This place used to be a prison for criminals, Sandayu said. But since Dotu kills anybody he deems a criminal, it's probably been abandoned. Naruto shook his head. Not quite. What? Be quiet. Naruto stopped everyone and had them hide underneath the walkway over their heads. Footsteps echoed from above, precise and measured, quiet, a shinobi's walk. Gesturing for Sandayu and his men to remain where they were, Naruto channeled chakra into his legs and leapt into the air. He latched onto the walkway. By applying chakra to his hands, he was able to stick onto it. The footsteps were getting closer. Naruto waited until they had passed before swinging himself onto the walkway. A guard was walking away, having not heard him. Keys dangled from his waist. Naruto didn't hesitate, moving behind the man and snapping his neck before the shinobi was aware of the danger. Setting the man on the ground, Naruto unhooked the keys and searched through the jail cells until he found the person that he was looking for. Princess Koyuki didn't appear to be injured, though her expression reminded him of a beaten child. She hung from shackles attached to her wrist, which were in turn attached to the ceiling. They looked painful. Her wrists were red, the skin rubbed raw. Koyuki. She raised her head. Her eyes widened. Naruto. What are you doing here? How did you find me? Shish. Naruto raised a hand to his lips. Keep it down or some other guards might hear you and come running. As if his words were prophetic, the loud clanging of feet reached them. Fortunately, it wasn't other guards coming to see what the commotion was. It was just Sandayu and his ragtag band of fighters. Princess Koyuki. Sandayu cried. You're all right. Naruto facepalmed as the sound of the various shouts and cries echoed all around them. And he'd just finished telling Koyuki to be more quiet. XOX. He's a demon. Monster. Monster. I want my mommy. The shinobi had barely a second to realize the danger they were in. One moment they were on their way to defeat an army. The next Jiraiya was in the middle of their formation, decimating them like they were newborn pups. The thing about Senjutsu was that it didn't just grant someone a few extra abilities. Everything about them was enhanced to levels that most humans would have never been able to reach on their own. Heightened reflexes, enhanced strength, incredible sensing abilities. This was on top of having his chakra nearly quadrupled. Those whose ranks he'd appeared within had tried to fight back at first, but as the minutes passed, their hope for victory had waned. Now, many of them were trying to flee. Jiraiya wouldn't let them. Oh, no you don't. Kaiten, Gameu Enden. Working in conjunction with Shima and Fukusaku, who both spat out oil, Jiraiya launched a massive fire bullet from his mouth. It slammed into the oil, creating an even larger, hotter flame. The fires then crashed into a group of shinobi who'd been trying to flee. The ninja screamed in agony as the conflagration burned them within seconds. Jiraiya ignored them and turned to the others. A massive Rasengan appeared in his hands, which he didn't hesitate to slam into another group of ninja. The explosion of energy that went up was very much like a maelstrom. Bright blue energy expanded outwards and engulfed the area around it, transforming into a dome, which, when cleared, revealed a massive crater. Are you sure you needed us for this, Jiraiya-chan? Shima asked. These idiots don't seem like much of a threat. Jiraiya Boya could have easily handled these on his own, Fukusaku agreed. If I only had to deal with these small fry, then I wouldn't have called you too, Jiraiya said. Does that mean you're expecting a troublesome opponent? Fukusaku asked. 2 troublesome opponents. As if his words had prophetic powers, several ice spikes were suddenly launched from the ground, trying to skewer him. Jiraiya leapt backward. However, as he did, a dozen birds made of ice flew at him from behind. They would have struck him in the back had he not used the replacement technique at the last moment. Someone is waiting for him when he reappeared several meters away. It was Nadare Roga, the Yuki shinobi who he'd battled a while back. Nadare tried to get in close, engaging him in a taijutsu battle, but the man clearly wasn't a taijutsu specialist. His moves were slow. What's more, even though Jiraiya was technically a ninjutsu specialist himself, he was leagues above this guy when it came to hand. He was also using Kawazu Kumite. A fist came at Jiraiya. It was dodged more easily than when Jiraiya was avoiding attacks from angry women after peeping. In retaliation, he threw his own punch. While Nadare did dodge the actual attack, he couldn't avoid the side effects that came from using senjutsu. Bua! Even though the fist was dodged, Nadare was still sent flying backwards. He was lifted off his feet, sailed through the air, and then slammed into a cliff side with enough speed to cause an avalanche that buried him underneath several hundred pounds of snow. When a practitioner of senjutsu used Kawazu Kumite, the sage chakra created an aura around them, which acted as an extension of themselves. With this aura, Jiraiya could extend the range of his physical attacks. What's more, because nobody but another senjutsu user could sense senjutsu chakra being used, it meant that Nadare wouldn't be able to figure out how Jiraiya had still hit him even though he dodged. Hyoten. Roga Nadare no Jutsu. The large hill of snow that had buried Nadare suddenly erupted. Several snow wolves burst from the snow and tried to attack Jiraiya. While he could have used a jutsu of some kind, like a fire jutsu, the attacks were coming in too fast for him to create hand seals. Therefore, Jiraiya decided to use his fists. He pounded each snow wolf that came, shattering them as if they were made of brittle glass. I'm surprised you survived that, Jiraiya called out. The snow had risen up before him like a cloud, making it impossible to see inside. It was an excellent smoke screen, and it would have worked, if Jiraiya couldn't sense Nadare's chakra. You'll find that I'm a lot more resilient than the other 2 that you've faced, Nadare said. You might be a Sannin, but within this Iceland, my powers and abilities far exceed your own. You think so, huh? Jiraiya mumbled. He didn't know how this guy could be so arrogant, but he guessed it didn't really matter. Nadare was confident in his victory. Jiraiya would have to show him that his confidence meant nothing when faced against a Sannin. Naruto needs my help, Jiraiya said, shifting his feet and adopting a wider stance. So, I'm afraid I'm going to have to remove you from the equation, just like I did your friends. Friends? Nadare snorted as if the notion that had been proposed was inconceivable. Don't be stupid. Those 2 weak fools that you and your apprentice defeated weren't my friends. They were just subordinates who proved to be less useful than I had anticipated. I have no use for weak fools who can't serve their feudal lord. So, Nadare was one of those people, the kind of person who didn't care for others if they weren't useful to their cause. That was fine. In fact, that would make killing him even easier. Is that so? Well, that's fine, then. It's not like I care anyway. Jiraiya moved into a basic Kawazu Kumite stance. Now come at me so I can beat you to death. You're in the way of me helping my apprentice. XOX. After rescuing Koyuki, Naruto had Sandayu lead them back the way they'd come. Well, that had been the plan anyway. Unfortunately, Hidan and Kakuzu were waiting for them in that narrow secret passage, which apparently wasn't much of a secret. They stood side by side. Hidan had slung his large, triple-bladed scythe over his shoulders. While there was a belligerent and impatient look etched on his face, Kakuzu appeared unruffled. Then again, Kakazu also wore a mask. Naruto couldn't even see his face. There you are, Kyuubi Jinchuriki, Hidan cackled. I've been waiting for you. You don't know how badly I want to pay you back for cutting my head off. I'm afraid I won't let you cut my head off, Naruto rebutted. Sorry, but your payback's not happening. Hey, you make it sound like I'm giving you a choice. Hidan licked his lips. We need him alive, Hidan, Kakuzu admonished. Che, I know that. It was a figure of speech, dipshit. Kakazu grunted. Naruto realized that their situation had gotten worse. Jiraiya was supposed to have drawn out the Akatsuki with the noise that he was making outside, but it looked like they'd seen through the ruse. Perhaps it had been naivety on their part to assume they wouldn't recognize a diversion when it happened. Sandayu, he murmured. Please turn around and find another exit. Jiraiya's sensei isn't fighting against these two, so he should be finishing up soon. Take Koyuki, get out of here the other way, and link up with Jiraiya's sensei. Hold on. Koyuki started, you can't seriously mean to fight these two on your own, can you? Course I do, Naruto grunted. If you haven't figured it out yet, these two aren't here for you. They're after me. If I went with you, they'd follow us and you'd get caught up in my battle. But, Sandayu, when you see Jiraiya, tell him that I could use a hand. Right. Hold on a second. Koyuki shouted. Are you really going to just leave Naruto to, hey? What are you doing? Let go of me. Sandayu grabbed Koyuki, picked her up, and carried her over his shoulder. Naruto didn't turn around, but he could hear her obscenities as they grew ever more distant. The stampeding of marching feet eventually receded. Silence took its place. I'm surprised you let them go so easily, Naruto said. I've already gotten my money from the feudal lord of this country, so I don't really care about them, Kakuzu admitted. I fucking do care. Damn it, Kakuzu, I wanted to kill something. Hidan whined. Like I care. Fuck you. Naruto didn't know what was with these two, or why they were arguing. He felt like they weren't taking him seriously. The thought pissed him off, but if training with Jiraiya had taught him anything, it was that it was sometimes better to be underestimated. Before either member of Akatsuki had time to so much as turn back around, Naruto pulled out a scroll, which he unrolled to reveal that a massive sealing matrix had been written on it. He bit his thumb, drawing blood, which he then smeared across the scroll. Water and lightning burst from the scroll. There was enough volume that the entire hallway was filled with electrified liquid. Kakuzu and Hidan were engulfed. Naruto didn't close his eyes, even though he wanted to. The light from the crackling lightning as it combined with water was so intense that his retina were being burnt. He dared not look away, however, for doing so could mean death. When dealing with Akatsuki, it was important to confirm that they were dead before turning the other way. Doten. Domu. Naruto leapt back as, before the water had even dispersed, Kakuzu burst from it and tried to pound a fist into his face. He hit the ground instead. A massive hole was blasted straight through it, and Kakuzu's arm became buried all the way to his bicep. Fuck. Hidan shouted as Kakuzu pulled his arm from the ground. Do you fucking know how much that hurt, you little fucking shit? The water cleared away, going from a flood to a mere trickle as the content in his scroll ran out. Hidan was still standing, though lightning skittered along his body. His triple-bladed scythe had been dug into the stone floor. He'd likely done it before the water had hit him, otherwise he would have been swept away. Kakuzu stood back up. His skin had turned a dark gray, signifying the use of some technique. The cloak that he'd been wearing was also gone. Several masks were on his back. 4. The dark skin suddenly flickered, changing back to its normal color, or what Naruto assumed was its normal color. To think you would destroy one of my hearts so easily, Kakuzu muttered. There seemed to be an underlying current of anger within his voice, like a live wire that Naruto had just stepped on. You are a dangerous opponent, TCH, and now I'm going to need to find a new heart. Hidan laughed as he pried his scythe from the ground. Serves you right, ya bastard. That's what you get for acting like a jerk. Shut up, Hidan. Naruto didn't get the entire conversation. He didn't care. His surprise attack had failed, which meant that he needed to go on the offensive. It was the only way he'd survive. Suin Senpuken. Naruto thrust out both of his fists, releasing two fist-shaped gusts of compressed wind at Kakuzu and Hidan. Neither of them did anything. Lightning crackled along Kakuzu's fist as he cut through the compressed wind fist like it was made of butter. Hidan's laughter echoed through the tunnel as the silver-haired ninja slashed through his wind attack with his scythe, cutting it in half. Is that the best you've fucking got? Hidan screamed. Raiden. Jion. Kakuzu opened his mouth and launched a lightning spear. The attack was so fast that Naruto almost missed it. He moved to the side and spread out his hands. There was no time to create a jutsu, so he used pure chakra manipulation, creating a large gust of wind in front of him in the shape of a shield. Even though lightning was weak against wind, Naruto still pain jolt through his fingers. He winced. Gritting his teeth, he pushed more chakra into his makeshift shield. The lightning dispersed. "I've got you now," Hidan cried as he appeared in front of Naruto, his scythe already raised. With no time to do much, Naruto rolled across the ground. Hidan's scythe sliced through the wall as if it was butter. As Naruto kipped to his feet, the insane Jushinist attacked him again. The air in front of Naruto was cut. He backpedaled, forcing Hidan to following him. Perhaps if he could separate these two, he could at least dispose of, or incapacitate, this guy. That was his hope anyway. Kaiten, Zukoku, Futon, Atsugai. That hope was dashed as a massive firestorm rushed toward both him and Hidan. Soon, they were both engulfed in the powerful attack. XOX. Hiro no Jutsu. Nader seemed to have learned his lesson. He didn't try to get in close again. Kneeling on the ground, he released chakra into the earth, which Jiraiya could feel like a vibration beneath his feet. While he didn't know what was coming, he already knew that these Yuki ninja used snow in their jutsu. Leaping into the air, Jiraiya avoided the large ice pillars that jutted from the ground and tried to skewer him like an angry female kunoichi with a naginata. While still in midair, he held out his hand. Chakra swirled around the hand. A Rasengan was formed. Then it grew larger and larger, until it was nearly 10 times the size of a regular Rasengan. Senpo. Choodama Rasengan. Jiraiya fell back toward the ground. He slammed his attack into the ice pillars, which became engulfed in a massive explosion. Icy winds kicked up. Snow and bedrock was launched into the air. Thanks to the fierce winds, Jiraiya was blasted backwards, but he used it to flip around and land several dozen feet away. His opponent wasn't so lucky, though perhaps that was to be expected. Nader had been close to the explosion. When the massive dome-shaped blasted of highly condensed chakra struck the ground, he was hit with the full brunt of the attack. The fierce winds lifted him off his feet, icy shards pelted his body, and when he struck the ground, another large cloud of snow was kicked up. Jiraiya sensed the small burst of chakra that signified a replacement technique being used. He guessed Nader had replaced himself with some ice at the last minute or something. Seconds later, a loud shout rang out around him. "Hyoten, Harumoko!" Ice burst from the ground, shifting into a massive tiger that launched itself at Jiraiya. The attack was destroyed when he punched it. "Now it's my turn. Ranji Shigami no Jutsu." Jiraiya channeled his chakra into his head, manipulating his metabolism and causing his hair to grow near instantly. Several thick bundles of hair slammed into the ground several meters away. Nader appeared from beneath the surface and leapt back to avoid the strands of hair, which punched through the ground and kicked up more snow. "Shima, Fukusaku. On it, Jiraiya Boya. Let's finish this." Kaiten, Daienden. Jiraiya created oil inside of his body with Senjutsu chakra. Fukusaku and Shima did the same, causing them to swell up like a pair of balloons. As the oil filled their mouths, all three of them released it in a massive stream, which ignited seconds later, and then merged into a much larger inferno. Nader screamed before, seconds later, he was overtaken. When the technique ran its course, Nader was gone. Not even ash remained. "It looks like the battle is over," Fukusaku said. Jiraiya turned around and ran toward the castle. "This one might be, but there's another battle that still remains. This next battle, is that the reason why you called us?" "Yes," Jiraiya grunted. "The two that we're going up against are Akatsuki, S-class ninja who are after the Kyuubi. Then they're going after Naruto-chan." Shima squawked. Neither she nor Fukusaku had met Naruto yet, but Jiraiya had told them plenty about the boy. Jiraiya nodded. "That's right. That's why I called you here. I'm going to need your help to take those two down." "Then let's hurry up and find them," Fukusaku said. As if answering his words, the earth suddenly shook. Jiraiya didn't know what had caused it, but he would have bet all of the money he'd made off of his books that Naruto was at the center of it. "Hang on, Naruto. Just hold on a little longer." XOX. Naruto was very lucky that Hidan had been in front of him. Immortals made excellent shields. Disarming Hidan had been easy enough, though the man had proven to be stubborn when it came to his side. He'd even managed to cut Naruto before being disarmed. However, once his weapon was gone, Naruto had been able to put Hidan in front of him, using him a makeshift shield while he summoned a wall of water from one of his scrolls. Steam rose everywhere. The water wall that he'd created had barely been enough to protect him, and even then, Naruto had still received several severe burns for his trouble. The skin on his arms was blistered and cracked in some places. Thankfully, they were healing quickly. He was extremely lucky to have suffered so little. I'm impressed that you managed to block my attack, Kakuzu's voice rang out all around him. Blocking an attack like that in an enclosed space like this is no small feat. Those seals of yours really are problematic. Oh, yeah, well, that combination attack of yours was really problematic for me, so I guess that makes us even. Yes, I suppose it does. Oi, stop fucking talking you two. Kakuzu, what the fuck was that about? You nearly fucking incinerated me. Hidan shouted from somewhere within the steam. Naruto had shoved Hidan in front of him when the attack had hit, using him as a first line of defense. He'd been hoping that Kakuzu's attack would have destroyed him. It looked like that was wishful thinking. Oh, you're still alive. The fuck is that supposed to mean? When the smoke cleared, it revealed that not only had Naruto survived Kakuzu's attack, but Hidan had as well. Though the man looked like he'd seen better days, certainly. His clothing was burnt and turning into ash in some places, his skin had numerous third-degree burns, and there were several cracks along his body, as if the heat had broken apart his skin. Dark red blood oozed from within the cracks. He was standing inside of a circle. It looked like the circle, a pentagram, had been made from somebody's blood, though that blood was blackened and burnt. Hidan had also gotten a hold of his scythe again. Fresh blood dripped from one of the blades. A sudden stinging sensation on Naruto's cheek made him realize that it must have come from him. How did he move so fast, and why didn't I notice this injury until now? Hee, you're fucked now, Hidan cackled. Then he brought the blade to his lip and licked the blood off. Naruto would have wrinkled his nose in disgust, but in that moment, a transformation came over Hidan. His skin darkened, becoming almost pure black, all except for the strange white lines that appeared along his body, reminding Naruto of a skeleton. What is this? Now you're fucking screwed, bitch. You are screwed. While Naruto didn't know what was going on, he knew better than to remain still. Whatever was happening to that guy had to be dangerous. This was likely some secret technique that would deal tremendous damage to him. He rushed forward. If he could reach Hidan and take him out before he could do anything, then Naruto should be safe. Before he could get even 5 feet, however, Hidan impaled himself through the thigh with his scythe, and Naruto cried out and stumbled forward as a sharp pain shot up his thigh. He placed a hand against his leg and was surprised to feel warm blood sticking to his palm. What the? Nah ha ha ha. Hidan's supremely pleased expression pissed Naruto off. Are you shocked? Angry? Good. Why don't we kick this up a notch? Snarling, Naruto leapt to his feet and charged at Hidan. His wound had healed already, so he wasn't worried. However, when Hidan stabbed himself in the shoulder, Naruto yelped and lost his balance as something invisible impaled him in the same shoulder. He hit the ground hard. His already injured shoulder screamed at him as he slammed it against the stone floor, rolled, and landed in a heap on the ground. Gaia ha ha ha. Hidan's mad cackling rang in Naruto's ears. What's this? Are you having some trouble? Here, let me help you. Naruto bit down on his tongue as fire laced through his chest. He looked down. A long line of blood was being drawn along his skin. Flesh split like a ripened fruit being cut by a wind-enhanced kunai. What's going on? That man is a Jashinist. Jashinist? Yes, he worships the god, Jashin. It's a false god created by humans. Really, this man is just a human experiment. His immortality was granted to him for his technique. Basically, by ingesting the blood of someone else while standing in that circle, he can inflict any damage given to him onto the person whose blood he ingested. Ah, I see. That's a troublesome ability. It is, but if you can get him out of that circle, or destroy it, you can negate his ability. Right. Got it. Thank you, Q. Anytime. Naruto was thankful for his high-level regenerative abilities. That was the only reason he hadn't been more grievously injured. Still, if he didn't do something soon, then he'd likely pass out from pain if not blood loss. Standing to his feet, Naruto glared at Hidan, who laughed some more. That's a good look, shitstain. Bitches like you need to know their place. A growl escaped from the back of Naruto's throat as he tucked his arms into his torso. I'll show you my place. Suin Senpuken. 2 compressed bursts of air were jettisoned from Naruto's fists. Hidan laughed. You can't hurt me with that. You're just going to hurt. The 2 powerful spheres compressed air slammed into the ground, and, more specifically, the circle that was the basis for Hidan's technique. The ground was crushed, denting and cracking, breaking up the lines that made the circle. Hidan's transformation vanished. What? Hidan's shout was cut off as Naruto channeled chakra to his feet and blasted off the ground. He was in front of Hidan before the man could react. Grabbing Hidan's head with both of his hands, he brought the man down to his knee. The loud crunch of a nose breaking echoed across the hall. Blood ran down Naruto's knee, warm and thick. The scent of copper filled his nose, making it wrinkle. Gaia. My nose. You broke my fucking nose, you little shit. I'm gonna break more than that. Naruto declared. Futon. Atsugai. A voice came from behind him. Naruto turned around. One of Kakuzu's masks was standing several meters away, a tornado-like mass of compressed wind in its mouth. It was then released, tearing apart the ground with ease. Naruto's eyes watered. The intense wind not only tore the ground apart, but also the walls and ceiling. Was this man trying to bury them underneath tons of rubble? Naruto unfurled a scroll, which contained a pre-written storage seal. The scroll was at least 2 meters in length. He lifted it over his head and channeled chakra into it, causing the scroll to glow a light blue as it activated. The debris that had been falling toward him was sealed within the scroll. Naruto then threw the scroll in front of him and released the contents, which he then shoved forward with an intense blast of wind chakra. His hope was to negate Kakuzu's attack with an attack of equal power. The 2 wind attacks collided in the middle. The rubble between them was crushed. However, true to Naruto's hope, his wind technique plus the large chunks of stone helped negate Kakuzu's jutsu, leaving him uninjured. This isn't good. Have you thought about using your Hanyu form? I'd rather not. If I use that and run out of energy before they do, it will leave me defenseless. You really are a difficult opponent, Kakuzu said. I've rarely met someone who was able to survive against us both for so long. Staying 1 step ahead of posers like you is easy, Naruto spat. Fucking easy. Huh. Don't make me laugh. You've been on the run from the very beginning of this fight. Grinning, Hidan stepped up to Kakuzu's side. He was bleeding heavily, and his body was still burnt, unlike Naruto who was already healed up. Face it, shitty Kyuubi brat. You're nearly done for. It's only a matter of time now before I gut you like a fucking fillet. Naruto had no intention of admitting that this jerk-off was right, but, well, Hidan was kinda right. He wasn't on his last rope, but neither were they. While Hidan might have looked like death warmed over, Kakuzu was perfectly fine. What's more, Hidan didn't appear to be bothered by the damage that had been done to him. You've put up a good fight, but it ends now, Kakuzu said, and 3 creatures with masks for faces emerged from his back. Oh, fuck. Gay ha ha. Time to say your prayers, shitty Kyuubi brat. Hidan rushed forward, killing intent pouring from him like water from a broken sieve. Naruto readied himself for the next round of this battle. He didn't have much hope of winning, but he would be damned if. Kuchios. Gamaguchi Shibari. The world around them became pink. The walls, floors, and ceiling, not only had the color changed, but flexible and rubbery-looking protuberances emerged from all sides like bubbles. Sticky and dripping with mucus, everything looked like a potential hazard. Naruto recognized the technique. It was one of Jiraiya's jutsu. Hidan, who'd been bull rushing at Naruto, suddenly found his foot stuck. Not one to miss out on such a golden opportunity, Naruto leapt at Hidan, a Rasengan forming in his hand. He even went a step further and added some wind chakra to it, though he kept the wind chakra powered down, mostly because he didn't want to damage himself too much. Futon. Rasengan. Naruto slammed into Hidan, who raised his scythe to try and slice at him. It was fortunate that he'd already taken this action into account. He flipped over the attack and, while in mid-air, slammed the Rasengan down on the scythe. Metal squealed as the wind-coated Rasengan sliced through all 3 blades. What the fuck? My scythe. Still in mid-air, Naruto spun around and created another wind-style Rasengan in his other hand, and then he slammed that into Hidan's face. The result was not pretty. Hidan's head exploded as if it had been stuck inside of a grinder. Blood, bits of brain matter, and skull fragments flew across the toad esophagus, splattering along the walls and clattering to the floor. Hidan's body remained standing. Miraculously, it was still moving, as if it was trying to find its head. Naruto realized that this man really might have been immortal. So he slammed another wind-style Rasengan into Hidan. His body was torn apart as well. Naruto, his face and the front of his body covered in blood, breathed heavily, as if he'd exerted himself a great deal more in that 1 second than he had for the entire battle. If this doesn't kill him, then I don't know what will, he declared. No, he's dead. Not even someone who's been enhanced like that man can withstand having their entire body destroyed. Good to know. Naruto. It wasn't until he heard his name being called, but Naruto suddenly realized that Jiraiya was with him. Of course, his sensei had to be there. This technique was his doing. Still, having Jiraiya suddenly appear out of nowhere like that was startling. Arrow Sennin. Jiraiya whacked Naruto over the head. Don't call me that, brat. It's Jiraiya sensei. Sensei. Whatever. Naruto rubbed his head. What are you doing here? More importantly, what happened to your face? Jiraiya's face had become quite hideous. His nose had grown large and bulbous. Warts had appeared all over his face, and his eyes reminded Naruto of a toad's. Now that he was looking, Jiraiya's entire body had taken on a more toad-like appearance. His hands were webbed, his body was hunched, and there were 2 small toads sitting on his shoulder. Wait, small toads sitting on his shoulder. Hello, Naruto Boya, the male toad said. My name is Fukusaku. I am one of the sages of Mount Myoboku. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. And I'm Shima. The female spoke with a huff. I'm glad I can finally put a face to a name. Nice to meet you too, he said, looking at Jiraiya for an explanation. These are the 2 elder toad sages of Mount Myoboku. They were sort of like my senseis when I was your age and helped me a lot. I see. Naruto didn't really see, but he decided not to bother with it. Anyway, where did Kakuzu go? He escaped, Jiraiya said reluctantly. I think he realized that I was coming and left before my technique was complete. I'm sure he's long gone by now. Naruto looked around, and, indeed, it seemed as if Kakuzu had fled the battle. That was disheartening. After the trouble that man had given him, he'd been looking forward to giving him a little payback. Still, I'm impressed, Jiraiya commented as he dispelled the technique. The walls, floor, and ceiling went back to normal. You managed to fight against 2 S-rank criminals and survive long enough for me to arrive. That's no small feat. Thank you. Naruto shook his head. There were more important things to be worried about than being embarrassed. If you're here, does that mean you ran into Sandayu and the others? Sandayu and the others? The questioning look on Jiraiya's face made Naruto feel like someone had punched him in the gut. He knew, from that expression, that Jiraiya had not, in fact, met up with Sandayu and Koyuki. Naturally, this also meant that Sandayu and Koyuki had not made it outside of the castle, which in turn meant. Damn it. Swearing, Naruto rushed out of the decimated hallway. He ignored Jiraiya's shouts, burst into the jail, leapt to the top floor, ran down several lateral passages, and eventually found himself in a massive room. It looked like a throne room. It was large and empty, with a single raised podium that had a large-ass chair on it. There was a hole in the roof. Sandayu and his men were in the room, on the ground. Many of them appeared to be dead but a few unconscious. Naruto ran up to Sandayu, who lay on his back, and knelt down. Sandayu, where's Koyuki? With a haggard groan, Sandayu opened his eyes and blinked. Several times. Blood stained his lips. That said, he didn't seem to be in danger of dying anytime soon. Koyuki was taken, Dotu, he. Say no more, Naruto cut him off. Where did he take her? Our Rainbow Glacier. Sandayu lifted his hand and pointed in a direction beyond the castle. Naruto nodded and stood up. Hang in there, Sandayu. I'm going to rescue Koyuki and kick Dotu's ass. Without wasting another second, Naruto channeled chakra into his legs and leapt through the ground. His destination, Rainbow Glacier. XOX. Naruto should have known that reaching Dotu wouldn't be that easy. There must have been some universal law that said, anything Naruto wants to accomplish has to be as ridiculously hard as possible, or something. Yes, someone up above must have truly hated him. Raiden, Gion. A spear of lightning blasted out from the treetops. Naruto reacted more quickly than even he'd expected, substituting himself with a log and reappearing on a branch several meters away. The lightning spear slammed into the ground. Snow sizzled as it was fried by electricity, and the ground shook like a ship struck by cannon fire. In retaliation for the lightning spear, Naruto launched a double senpuken at the treetops where the spear had come from. Kakuzu burst from the tree. He landed on the ground and glared up at Naruto, his red and black eyes irritated. "This is as far as you go, Kyuubi Jinchuriki," Kakuzu said. "I may not be able to take your heart, but since you've appeared before me, I refuse to come back to Akatsuki empty-handed." There were so many words that Naruto could have said in that moment. Fortunately, he wouldn't get to say anything of them. Udoma Rasengan. Like a descending meteor, Jiraiya fell from the sky. Kakuzu jumped back as the Toad Sage hit the earth. A massive explosion of energy caused the ground to erupt. Jiraiya leapt back, toward Naruto, and grinned at Kakuzu. "Sorry, but the day I let you take my apprentice will be a cold day in hell." Ero Sennin. TCH. Would it kill you to give me some respect? It might. What are you doing here? What's it look like I'm doing? I'm here to deal with this guy while you go rescue the princess. Jiraiya cracked his knuckles as he stared at Kakuzu. "Anyway, why don't you get going? I can handle things here." "Right. Thanks, sensei. Now you call me sensei." Naruto took off, leaping clear over Jiraiya and Kakuzu. He thought the Akatsuki member would try to attack him. Kakuzu didn't. He must have realized that attacking him while Jiraiya was there would invite an attack in retaliation. It wasn't long before the two disappeared from his sight as he continued running. The sounds of battle echoed behind him. XOX. Naruto eventually reached the Rainbow Glacier. True to its name, the place that Naruto stood in was a valley set between several mountains, and standing over him like silent guardians were three massive glaciers. Their icy figures gleamed in the bright sun, which seemed to contrast with the tense atmosphere. Standing in the center of these massive pillars of ice, Dotu used Koyuki as a shield. He stood behind her and pressed a kunai to her neck. The expression on Koyuki's face made Naruto clench his fists. "I didn't think it would take you long to find this place," Dotu said. "Tell me, boy, do you know what this place is?" Since he didn't know how to rescue Yuki, Naruto shrugged and played along. "Your grave," Dotu sneered. "Cute. This place is where the secret treasure of the Kazuhana family is buried. I've searched for ages and could never find it, but I eventually came upon my brother's journals one day when I was searching for a way to rebuild this kingdom. That was when I uncovered the location. Everything that my brother had worked for, all of the riches that he hid, they are all here. That is why I need the hex crystal. So, hand it over, if you'd please." They were at an impasse, or rather, Naruto was hesitant to give this man what he wanted. "If I give this to you, what guarantee will I have that you'll let Koyuki go? On my honor as the king of this country, I promise you that I'm sorry," Naruto cut him off, "but since you've sent assassins after us, your honor doesn't mean shit to me. Instead, here's what we'll do." Naruto created a clone, which he gave the necklace to. "This clone will bring the necklace to you. At the same time, you'll let Koyuki go and have her walk toward me. And what guarantee do I have that you won't take Koyuki back along with the necklace?" asked Dotu. "No deal. Then how about this?" Naruto tossed the necklace near the center of the space between them. "Let Koyuki go and grab it yourself. Be warned, if you try to take Koyuki with you, I will get to that necklace first and you won't get the key." The cogs turning in Dotu's head were practically visible. Naruto knew that this man had to realize there was no other compromise. Eventually, he reluctantly let Koyuki go and shoved her away. "Fine, have it your way." As Dotu went toward the hex crystal, Naruto sunshined to Koyuki, appearing by her side in an instant. He grabbed her hand and sunshined back to where he'd been standing before. By now, Dotu had already picked up the hex crystal and was walking back toward the glacier that apparently hid Saozutsu's treasure. "Are you all right, Koyuki?" Naruto asked. "Why yes," Koyuki said. "But Naruto, my father's treasure. Why did you give him the hex crystal?" Because this place is going to be a battleground soon anyway. Naruto shrugged. He knows that I'm not going to let him just walk off with the treasure, just as he knows that you're more valuable as a hostage than a corpse. He's currently setting the playing field against me. Dotu was likely going to force Naruto to protect Koyuki. It was always harder to fight when you had to protect someone, after all, especially when the other person didn't care if the one that you were protecting was killed. Can you beat him? Koyuki asked. Naruto grinned. What are you saying? Of course I can. I'm the strongest shinobi in the entire world. There's no way some spoiled feudal lord can, Naruto blinked and looked around. Is it just me, or has it gotten warmer all of a sudden? Now that you mention it, it does feel a little warm, Koyuki said in surprise. She and Naruto looked around. Naruto had to blink twice. The snow, it was melting. All of the snow and ice that had covered the ground turned into water, which flowed into a stream that fed into a large lake. The lake must have been frozen underneath the ice. Meters away, ice sloshed off of the glaciers, and Naruto realized that they weren't glaciers at all. They were. What the hell is this? Dotu screamed as he looked up at the obsidian pillars gleaming like monolithic obelisks. These are heat generators. Koyuki sounded like someone who'd just been told that the dead could be brought back to life. I see. Naruto stood up and looked at the obelisks. This is the treasure of the Kazuhana family. It wasn't money or riches. It was these heat generators. I guess, your old man was trying to bring a season other than winter to his people, or maybe he was just trying to bring it to you. Koyuki didn't say anything, but her wide eyes as she gazed around at the melting snow told him enough. Several feet away, Dotu was glowering at the generators. Naruto didn't particularly care about what was going through that man's mind. However, this was a good chance to end their fight before it even began. Hey, Koyuki. What? Tell me I'm the best. Tell me I'm the best, Naruto insisted. I need you to tell me that I'm the best ninja you know, that I'm the strongest. If you tell me I'm the best, I'll be able to beat that douchey uncle of yours no problem. Koyuki gawked at him for several seconds, but then, like storm clouds breaking, she smiled at him. Naruto, you are without a doubt, the greatest, most incredible ninja that I have ever met. Hey. With encouragement like that, there's no way that I could lose. With chakra encasing his feet, Naruto launched himself forward so quickly it was almost like he'd shunshined. A Rasengan appeared in his right hand. Perhaps it was because of the light from the now melting ice, but the Rasengan suddenly became multicolored, like a rainbow. Is that rainbow chakra? Koyuki gaped. Dotu noticed his approach and went through several hand seals. Do you really think I'll let you come anywhere near me? Hyoten, Soryu Bofusetsu. Thrusting out his hands, two black dragons appeared as if bursting forth from the ether. They were launched at Naruto, merging to create a massive back snow dragon that turned into a giant tornado. Naruto didn't know what this technique was, but he wasn't about to let himself be beaten here. He pumped more and more chakra through his body, releasing his own transformation. His hair grew longer and became even more spiky. It also went from blonde to red. His eyes, once blue, became amethyst. Teeth became sharp fangs, nails became claws, and the whisker marks on his cheeks thickened and turned jagged like lightning bolts. Bright purple chakra burst from his body. Naruto slammed his free hand into the monstrous black dragon technique. He might as well have been punching paper. The double black dragon exploded before his fist, shattering into millions of fragments and massive gusts of tornado-like winds. Naruto burst through the intense aftermath of his attack. And then he was in front of Dotu, whose eyes were bulging, whose jaw had become unhinged, and whose very presence radiated shock. Naruto grinned. Eat this, you son of a bitch. Nanero Rasengan. He slammed the Rasengan into the shocked Dotu's chest. The chakra armor that covered Dotu's entire body held for several seconds. However, Naruto's chakra was a blend of his own chakra and the Kyuubi's. Corrosive and poisonous, it was far too intense for human technology to deal with, and so, mere seconds after the attack slammed into him, the chakra armor was red like paper being shredded by a lightning jutsu. GG Gaia. The Rasengan ground through flesh, muscle, and bone. Dotu was then sent flying backwards. His scream echoed across the valley before, with a boneless splat, he crashed into the side of a mountain, which exploded and sent tons of rubble collapsing on top of him. Compared to my fight with Kakuzu and Hidan, that was really easy, Naruto said, clapping his hands. I'm almost disappointed in how easy that was. I think we should be glad that it was so easy. I'm personally not interested in fighting anymore right now. I'm the one who did all the fighting. You just sat there on your comfy bed and watched. True, but watching you fight is almost as tiring as if I were to fight myself. Whatever. Naruto stretched his arms and walked back over to Koyuki, who sat on the ground like an idiot. She must have been surprised that the fight had ended so quickly. He didn't blame her. With everything that had happened, he'd been expecting an epic showdown, but it seemed that Dotto didn't live up to the hype of his ninja. Well, Koyuki, Naruto stretched his hand, how was that? Was I awesome? Koyuki stared at his hand, and then, with a smile, she took it and allowed him to pull her up. You were amazing. What did I tell you? Best ninja ever, Naruto said with a grin. Believe in the future and spring will surely come, a voice announced. He and Koyuki looked around. A large 3D projection had appeared in the air above them. It was of a younger Princess Koyuki, who couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 when it was taken. What will you do when spring comes, Koyuki? The voice asked. The little girl's bright smile was like a rainbow after a rainstorm. I'm going to be a princess. Oh, the voice sounded amused. What kind of princess? Let's see, little Koyuki looked thoughtful. One that's strong, and kind, and most of all, one who fights for justice. The voice chuckled. That's some dream. Koyuki held a hand to her mouth. Tears had gathered in her eyes as her younger self spoke again. But, there's something else that I want to be, too. And what is that? The man, who Naruto guessed now was her father, asked. Beaming at the camera, or rather, the one who was holding the camera, Koyuki, her voice full of gusto, said, an actress. The Koyuki standing next to Naruto laughed as her tears finally fell. They were not tears of sadness, however, as the smile on her face proved otherwise. They were tears of joy. Several dozen meters away, the director, who must have arrived sometime during Naruto's fight, turned to his cameraman. Tell you got all that. The cameraman gave the director a thumbs up. XOX. Preparations for Koyuki's coronation had gone underway. It was a large event. Not only did the people of Yuki no Kuni need to be informed about the new regime change, but repairs had to be effected to downtrodden cities. Koyuki had to make several appearances to let everyone know about her, and everyone needed to learn about the heat generators that had melted the snow. This was on top of creating a new council, rebuilding the army, and filing massive amounts of paperwork to determine things like budget and new policies set down by Koyuki. Kakuzu had managed to escape, according to Jiraiya. The man had apparently sacrificed 2 of his masks. That was disappointing, but Jiraiya had assured Naruto that it would take the man a long time to recover from his injuries. Naruto spent most of his time with Koyuki, who had requested him to be her bodyguard whenever she went out. His days were often spent looking at her backside. He had to admit, spending time staring at Koyuki's backside was time well spent, and not just because hers was lovely. While standing guard was boring, he and Koyuki got to have fun during the evenings. Thanks to the toads of Mount Myoboku, Naruto was well on his way to becoming an alcoholic. He blamed it on the first time he drank sake with the toad boss, Gamabunta. That day, Naruto had discovered the joys of being shit-faced, which was why, every night after her tasks were done, he and Koyuki would go to her room and drink firebrand sake until they passed out. That night, he and Koyuki were hitting the sake a little harder than normal. By a little, Naruto meant they'd already drunk 2 whole jugs of sake and showed no signs of stopping. The seal that Naruto used to slow down his metabolism was working wonderfully, and he was well on his way to becoming drunker than Jiraiya in a brothel. He and Koyuki were sitting on the bed, which was a luxurious bed indeed, large and soft and covered in satin sheets. Koyuki was sitting cross-legged. Her expensive dress had long since been discarded. She was now wearing a pair of black shorts that did an adequate job of covering her butt and a loose sleeveless shirt. Naruto was only wearing his pants and a black shirt. Can you believe that jerk? Koyuki asked, referring to the minister who she had a meeting with that day. The punk thought he could, he thought I was easy. Did you see what he did? I saw, Naruto said, hiccuping. He tried to touch my butt. Well, Naruto slurred. It is a very nice butt. Koyuki sent him a sly expression. Oh, you like my butt. Maybe it was the alcohol, but Naruto was feeling really bold. Yes. Hey, wanna touch it? Can I? A grinning Koyuki uncrossed her legs and shifted until she was on all fours, her backside facing Naruto. Go on. Give it a feel. Naruto belatedly realized that he must have been drunker than he thought. He didn't even hesitate in placing his hands on Koyuki's ass, which was somehow firm yet squishy, kind of like a marshmallow. Were all women's asses this nice? Do you like it? Koyuki asked, her breathing hitching when Naruto squeezed. It's nice. Naruto felt like he was in a trance as he squeezed, caressed, and massaged Koyuki's buttocks, which clenched with his movements. Her shorts folded as he worked, conforming to her mound and outlined the traces of her lips. Naruto's pants became unbearably tight. And not so rough, Koyuki moaned as she fell forward, burying her face in a large, fluffy pillow. She turned her head and, with her cheeks turning a pale pink, she said, "You have to be more gentle." Still lost in a drunken haze, Naruto did as told, caressing her ass more tenderly. However, butt rubbing soon wasn't enough. Leaning over, Naruto stuck his head between her thighs and placed his mouth over her crotch. Koyuki's moan was stifled as she buried her face into her pillow. Her butt cheeks clenched and quivered as her thighs closed around Naruto's head. This normally would have been heaven, but the act ended up knocking off the seal that Naruto had been using, sobering him up instantly. It didn't take more than a second for Naruto to comprehend his situation, and he panicked. Koyuki squawked in surprise when Naruto jerked his head from between her thighs. He leapt off the bed and backed off. Koyuki turned around and, sitting on her haunches, she frowned at him. What are you doing, Naruto? Why'd you stop? I'm sorry. We shouldn't be doing this. Why not? Naruto grabbed his left arm. You wouldn't understand. Oh, yeah. Koyuki pinned him with a surprising glare. Try me. There must have still been some alcohol running in his system. That was the only explanation he could use to justify why he said what he did next. It's because I'm a monster. What? I said I'm a monster. I'm not human. Judging from the look on Koyuki's face, she didn't understand what he was saying. Naruto, I know you're a super awesome and powerful ninja, but just because you're strong, that doesn't mean you're not human. You don't get it. Frustrated, Naruto channeled wind chakra into his fingers and sliced his left forearm clean open. Blood gushed forth as the veins in his arm were severed. It spilled over his forearm and splashed against the ground, creating a dark pool. Koyuki screamed. What are you doing? Just watch. Naruto said forcefully enough that Koyuki could do nothing but watch. She didn't have to watch long. Mere seconds after he sliced open his wrist, the wound closed. When Naruto wiped the blood off, her eyes widened. The wound had disappeared entirely, as if he'd never cut it open. What do you see now? Naruto asked. I'm immortal. I can't age, I heal from any injuries I receive, I'm not even sure if I can die. What can I be if not a monster? All his life, people had been calling him a monster. Naruto knew that the reason he'd been called that was because of the Kyuubi being sealed inside of him. That was why it hadn't bothered him as much when he found out. His thoughts had been that if he could just change their opinion, that if he could show them what a splendid ninja he was, they would accept him. But now, everything they said about him was true. He was a monster. He couldn't blame this on the Kyuubi, though a part of him wanted to. Koyuki slowly climbed off the bed. Her bare feet padded across the carpet. Naruto was so caught up in his own thoughts that he didn't know what she was doing until she had already pulled him into a hug. He stiffened, and, for just a second, Naruto went into a panic and prepared to run. Then she spoke. I don't know why you think that would make you a monster, but I can promise you that you're the only one who thinks that way. Naruto wanted to run away. This was just like the situation with Toki, and he didn't want any part of it. Someone like him shouldn't be getting this close to others. No one else knows about this. If they did, then they would all hate me. I don't hate you. You're drunk. I'm drunk enough to be honest. I don't hate you. I could never hate you, and if anyone else found out, if they really cared about you, they wouldn't hate you either. He shouldn't have been there, in this position, with this woman holding him. It was imperative that he get out of this position. If Naruto remained like this, if he stayed like this, then he was going to become too comfortable. I can't let myself get too close to others. Why not? Koyuki asked. Because I can't give anyone a normal relationship. Naruto didn't know if it was because of Koyuki's calming presence, the alcohol still in his system, or some other factor that he hadn't considered, but, in that moment, the floodgates keeping his mouth shut released. There was no stopping him now. I'm immortal. I'm going to outlive everybody else. Even if I allowed myself to fall in love, even if she accepted me despite knowing everything, our relationship wouldn't last. She'd eventually die, and I would be alone again. It was something that had hit Naruto only within the last few months, but now that he understood what it meant to be immortal, he'd realized that most of his dreams would never come true. An immortal couldn't become Hokage, an immortal couldn't have a wife, an immortal couldn't start a family. Even he tried, even if he succeeded, he would outlive everyone. That was not the kind of life that he wanted. But you don't want to be alone, right? Koyuki asked. Naruto twitched. His intention had been to jerk away from her touch, but his will was weakening. Instead of moving away, he moved closer, pressing his face into her chest. Of course I don't. No one wants to be alone for their entire life. Then why should you let yourself be alone? Because you don't want those people to eventually leave you. Koyuki finished. Naruto remained silent. I understand how you feel. It's difficult to have people you love disappear from your life, but isn't even worse to not have those people in there at all. Naruto needed a moment to reply. I can't believe you're the one telling me this. I'm merely paraphrasing what I've learned from you, Koyuki shot back. Aren't you the one who kept berating me about letting go of my dreams because I was afraid of losing the people close to me? I don't remember saying that, Naruto said. Well, you did. A good portion of Naruto's strength fled him, or maybe it was just the fight going out of him. He no longer had any desire to move from this woman's embrace. Still, some part of him did try to resist. I can't promise you a stable relationship. I didn't ask for one. If you grant me this one night, that will be enough. Just tonight. Well, I won't mind if you decide to come back every now and again. He would have liked to keep blaming the alcohol. But he was completely sober now. His thoughts were about as rational as they would get. You don't mind that I'm a monster. You might live to regret it. A soft, delicate yet strong hand went under his chin and lifted his head up. Koyuki's smiling face was there to meet him. I could never, would never, regret this, she said. Then she kissed, and every argument that Naruto could have given fled. All that remained was the feeling of her lips. XOX. Itachi and Kisame were sitting together around a campfire. It was the middle of the night, and the fire cast shadows along their faces. Despite the late hour, neither of them were asleep. They were shinobi. S-ranked missing ninja. They could go days without sleep if required. Even when they did sleep, it was only in fits, and always a light sleep that they could easily wake up from. Nay, Itachi, are you thinking about your brother? Hey, I wonder what happened to that brat. We know that the retrieval team from Konoha was not successful in getting him back, but we don't know anything else. Do you Orochimaru took over his body? Was that a twitch? Kisame, Itachi said coldly. Do not speak of things that we have no information on. You really are worried. Itachi said nothing to Kisame's comment. He stared at the fire, doing what he did best, not speaking at all. Just then, without warning, the area around them suddenly exploded. However, Itachi and Kisame were not S-ranked ninja for no reason. They both replaced themselves with a log. Reappearing several meters away, they stared at the scorched ground where they had been standing seconds prior. Kisame whistled. That was a close one, nay, Itachi. Kisame was unable to say any more as something large and covered in black markings slammed into him. He was sent flying, out of Itachi's sight. The object, a person, flew after him along with two other figures, one male and two females. That meant Itachi was alone with their original attacker. Several snakes coiled around his body. They bared their fangs and sunk them into his flesh, except Itachi had already cast an illusion, and the body that the snakes had bitten turned into a flock of crows. Itachi appeared from around a tree, walking calmly into the clearing. Ku, I should have expected nothing less from you, Itachi-kun, a familiar voice said, echoing around the clearing. Orochimaru. That is correct. A figure stepped into the clearing. It did not look like Orochimaru. Not at all. Hello, Itachi-kun, Orochimaru wearing the face of Sasuke Uchiha said, the Tomo in his red Sharingan eyes spinning. It's been a long time. XOX. 2 weeks after Koyuki was coronated as the daimyo of Yuki no Kuni, now renamed Haru no Kuni, Naruto and Jiraiya were slated to leave. Much of their time in the newly minted spring country had spent with Koyuki, well, Naruto's time had been. Jiraiya had wandered off to the nearest brothel unless his presence was required. Naruto wondered what Ero Sennin would think if he discovered that his student was sleeping with their client. A lot of his time had also been spent training. Since Naruto was essentially training himself these days, his days of training mostly went with him coming up with his own techniques, and occasionally asking Jiraiya for advice or a sparring partner. Their battles had become a bit closer. That was what Naruto had thought anyway, until Jiraiya upped his game and pounded him into the dirt. Still, he was making his sensei work now. Considering how easily that blasted perv had beaten him before, this was a major improvement. Kyuubi had stopped talking to him. Naruto had tried speaking to her several times, but she'd grown silent for some reason. He'd once tried entering the mindscape. However, for whatever reason, he'd been unable to get in. It was like his mindscape had become inaccessible somehow. He'd wondered about that, but shrugged it off as a Kyuubi thing. On the last day, Naruto stood on a dock, next to a procession of people who had all come to see them off. Technically, it was only Koyuki who'd come to see them off, but everyone else had joined them for security purposes, or something. Looks like this is it, Koyuki Dono, Jiraiya said. Indeed. Koyuki smiled pleasantly at the man. I hope that you two have a safe journey. I'm sure we will. Jiraiya, carrying a small sack over his shoulder, turned and walked up the ramp. Come on, brat. Despite Jiraiya's words, Naruto remained where he was. There were so many things that he wanted to say to Koyuki. Thank you for your words, thank you for accepting me, thank you for helping me, but the words wouldn't come out. They'd become lodged in his throat. Well, I guess, this is it, he said instead. Yes. Koyuki smiled. It is. Please be careful on your journey back home. Also, do not forget what I said. You are welcome here any time. Alright. In the end, Naruto couldn't say what he wanted to. He turned around and walked up the boarding ramp, and the vessel that they were on was on its way soon after. Naruto stood by the port side, watching as Koyuki and her entourage grew smaller and smaller until they disappeared altogether. I guess this was inevitable, huh, Kyuubi? Ellipsis. No response. Naruto sighed. I'm surprised you didn't give your girlfriend a kiss goodbye, Jiraiya said, coming up beside him. Naruto blushed, but kept his cool. She's not my girlfriend. Really? Could have fooled me. Haven't you been banging her since Dotu's defeat? If Naruto had not been standing still, he would have tripped. Instead, he slammed his face against the railing, and then looked up at Jiraiya. How did you? I don't know what you're talking about. A grinning Jiraiya, whose face reminded Naruto of himself after he pulled a successful prank, crossed his arms and chuckled. Is that so? Then I must have been seeing things. I'm sure that the blonde who was screwing Koyuki Dono's brains out every night for the past 2 weeks was some other spiky-headed blonde. Sorry. My mistake. It only took Naruto a few seconds to understand what Jiraiya's words meant. This man had spied on him. His sensei had been spying on him and Koyuki. He'd been spying on them, and he saw them having sex, and. I'm going to kill him. Arrow seen Nani in. Jiraiya laughed and leapt into the air as Naruto swiped at him. Scowling up at the man, Naruto felt his hackles rise when his sensei pulled down his eyelid and blew him a raspberry. I'm going to murder you. Naruto leapt at Jiraiya, who laughed like a loon and dodged. It wasn't long before the sound of explosions echoed across the ship, and sailors scurried every which way while the captain shouted himself hoarse trying to make the two stop. His sensei was never going to let him live this down. He just knew it. Stupid Arrow Sennin. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next part.